Welcome back to the work session for the Pitkin County Board of Commissioners on Tuesday, March 7th. We are having lunch, and we're also beginning with a joint meeting with Open Space and Trails. So I'm going to turn it over to whom?
You can turn it over to me.
Okay, Gary, take it away.
Well, thank you. And yeah, this is a really big topic that we're going to kind of update you guys on, because back in November of 2021, the Open Space Board held a retreat that some of the commissioners attended too. And it was really at the time of trying to understand the recreation capacity and management, because we were in the midst of the pandemic, and instead of like the world shutting down, the world decided to show up. And you know, and they came, and I don't blame them. I live here, it's beautiful. And yes, and we saw us and other mountain towns and communities have seen a significant increase in the amount of recreational use and people coming to this valley to enjoy the beauty and the recreational resources that we have. And so the Open Space Board was concerned about this big spike in use, and so they held this retreat, and we brought a ton of land managers together to really start the conversation of what do we do? Because, you know, if we all act alone, we're not going to truly address the issue. And if we could act together and maybe find a way to form a coalition and work on it, we could come up with some action items on addressing some of the biggest issues that we're seeing through the valley. So, with that direction, we have been working with Utah State University doing visitor use studies, and our planning staff has been working to bring together all these coalition members and to get to this point. And I'm going to turn it over to Carly to kind of give an update of where we're at. And then, you know, I think it's really kind of one of the cool parts of what we've been doing is this visitor use survey, because what we've heard is there's too much use. There's people all over the place. Now we just wanted to get what are the people actually that are going to these places thinking? And we haven't really ever tried to do that on a large enough scale. And so we did that last year, and we got some really good feedback, and Chris Mons with Utah State University will give that update. So,
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Thank you for waiting. So we had that meeting last year about the Recreation Coalition, and the guy from California came and talked about the feedback they got on their trail use and all of that. And what happened after that meeting?
That's what we're gonna give you.
That's where we are.
Yeah.
yes,
This is the next
Good
meeting about
memory.
that.
yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You have not missed anything.
So please don't let the time in between the meetings make you think we haven't been doing any work. We have a lot to update you on today, so I'll go first and give you a little background on the coalition that we've formed and the progress that we've made in organizing our partners, and then Chris Mons will describe the results of the study that you last heard about. So it's a whole lot of work, a year and a half's worth of work to be exact. So, you know, if you have questions, at least through my slides, please pause and ask them, because this is a little bit sort of new information. So I'm going to take a step back from where Gary started at the state level. And in 2020, I'm going to pull up the executive order. Governor Polis signed, I think it's Executive Order B 2020-008. And this executive order started funding for what's called the Colorado Outdoor Partnership, and their information I can provide later, but there's a website for it. And this helped to create this initiative called the Regional Partnerships Initiative. So at the state level, this has been going on for 2 years, and we applied for and successfully received funding this past January. So through this presentation, I'm going to describe what that means for us. So the last time we spoke, we were just a loosely organized group of land managers with, as Gary mentioned, a goal for addressing this topic of recreation capacity, how to manage visitors. What we've done since that time is formally organized a coalition, and it's a little tough to see on the screen, but you can barely see an outline of a yellow boundary. That is the boundary today of the Roaring Fork Outdoor Coalition that has been formalized, plus partnerships with the Forest Service and BLM extend our reach into the lower parts of the Roaring Fork Valley and down to, down along the Colorado River. So this group of land managers that you last heard about from our retreat in 2021 have combined our resources and come up with this coalition description. And I think this is important to pause on and read through thoroughly. The real intent of this outdoor coalition is to convene land managers, decision makers, really to get ideas into action. We have Forest Service partners, we have City of Aspen partners, we have Snowmass Village, BOCC, CPW, all represented in this coalition. And the purpose that we're trying to work towards is getting collaboration across jurisdictions on projects to bring ideas, not just sit in continual planning towards ideas and bring our plans together. Yes?
Carly, you didn't mention Carbondale or Glenwood or any of those population centers.
At this current time, they are not part of the coalition. And that has been to keep momentum going with the group that we have organized, and knowing that partners like the BLM and Forest Service extend into those areas.
For public clarity, shouldn't we be saying public land managers? Everybody you mentioned is public.
Yeah.
I mean, that
Yeah.
to me would make that clearer, make the discussion clearer.
Yeah, we can certainly adjust that to be public land managers.
Can I
Yeah.
just ask, is the boundary at the top of the watershed?
Yes.
All the way around, okay,
Yeah.
so it's a watershed.
It is. It's an upper watershed
Central.
valley. I forgot to mention Eagle County. Apology. So Eagle County Open Space is part of our coalition membership.
And it's something that, when we talked about it in the retreat, we need to limit an area to try to get something to be able to do.
Yes.
And, we kind of convene this group, and so the goal is to move it in the future. But right now, there's a lot on the plate just from this.
Can we see the map one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. So that orange boundary, a little tough to see. That's the bottom
Top of the watershed.
boundary is the top of the watershed, and it wraps around the watershed to include parts of the frying pan in Eagle County into El Jebel, Basalt. And then the boundary currently is drawn at the Pitkin County line there, but recognize that our partners do represent lands extending into Garfield County,
And well beyond the yellow into the green.
Yeah.
well beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And as Gary mentioned, our group was really organized to address these recreation levels that we're seeing that are exceeding capacity or infrastructure that's available. And I'll jump into these goals here. So a primary goal of bringing this coalition together is to really strengthen partnerships, strengthen the land ownership boundaries so that we can plan for wildlife and natural resources together. A secondary goal and a really important goal is to collect and share data. And part of that data collection, Chris will report on in just a few moments. Chris and Noah will report on. Another thing is relying on data that's already been collected, such as the biodiversity work that we have at the county scale. And then engaging our community, talking to a broad group of stakeholders. So our coalition is limited to public land managers. How do we expand our reach and talk to other stakeholders that have vested interest into this? And as we mentioned, this isn't we're not looking at this as another planning effort. We're not trying to create another plan for the sake of a plan to sit on a shelf. We really want to look at this as a way to bring ideas to action, collaborate across those jurisdictional boundaries to identify those hotspots or those target spots that need strategies sooner than later. And then sustain public momentum. So these are the coalition goals that the members of the coalition we are a part of have identified. How does this fit into the statewide level?
So just a quick note. If I didn't know anything about this issue, except what I'm experiencing in the woods, and I read that, I wouldn't have a clue that this affected that except getting down to the fourth bullet point. The fourth bullet point is what it's about. The rest of it is sort of how to get at what it's about. So with respect, this is really unclear as to what we're trying to do. And there's a lot of public out there that really cares about this question, and this doesn't help them figure out what we're trying to do to get there, in my opinion, the way it's framed. But just for what it's worth.
Well, the problem is we're trying to create this coalition.
I understand.
So that's where all those pieces of the first puzzle are really at, because to get to bring ideas to action, we need to strengthen. We've been strengthening our partnerships ever since that retreat, but, you know, the collecting and sharing data is a huge piece of the puzzle that we're still working on. And so that's why these are kind of steps to get to.
So they're temporal steps.
Mhm.
So I think another way to put this is if you were the public and you wanted the elevator pitch on what we're doing, we're organizing this coalition so that we can start to collaborate on projects across jurisdictions.
So-
That's what we will do.
See, that's kind of what I mean, collaborate to do what? And so we're in the public right now.
Yeah.
Maybe hopefully there's some journalists listening in. So, you know, we're trying to show folks that we're making progress on this. But what I'm hearing is a lot of well-intended and well-framed organizational stuff that doesn't really focus on what this is about, in my opinion.
And I think that that's an important point, and I think that at this time, we want to be really careful that we don't necessarily know what these projects will be, and we're coming to you.
I understand
with
that, but what this doesn't say is the problem is X, for example.
Well, we're still defining the problem, and that's the part that this funding that we have been given will help us to do. So,
Maybe a vision statement
yes.
might kind of help to clarify some of this.
So, let me jump to this slide here real quick then. So, this might be helpful right now. This is down below in the orange, this is where we are. We are really trying to organize partners, collect data, try to get an understanding of what we're up against, what the problem is that we're up against. We have just received funding from this executive order that I described for $75,000 to hire a facilitator to organize our coalition, to bring in stakeholders, to talk to the public. We have an entire process this summer for a community survey. We have focus groups planned. We have a number of other outreach efforts planned. And the hope is that through hiring this consultant, this coalition will establish vision and goals. We are not there yet, and I understand that we're in sort of a gray area of this project. We are in the very beginnings of this project, and so I am not prepared today to come to you with a vision or goals for this project yet. We need to hear from the community. We need to hear from the list of, we've got 50 stakeholder groups alone identified. We need to hear the issues and challenges that they're experiencing, the things that they need to see, the things that they want us to prioritize. And through hiring a neutral facilitator, we hope that we will be able to establish those vision and goals through this phase of the project, what we're calling phase 2, building capacity and strengthening projects or partnerships.
Francie, can I ask a question? Thanks for this. I think I guess what I hear Michael asking is, do we need to re-articulate the problem, the condition that led to this need, to understand what the need was to form this coalition? And I take it to mean pressure on our public lands is greater than we ever anticipated in a shorter period of time than we anticipated post-pandemic or coincident with the pandemic. So we have a need, the problem, the need that we're trying to solve, and so now you're trying to take it apart and build this coalition to.
Because otherwise, yeah, what we have learned from after that retreat is, yeah, there's a problem, but where do we push the button first? And the Fire Service doesn't look at it the same way as the county looks at it.
So that's
The
what, the
BLM,
point that Carly was making, is that
that's
the
it.
problem is ill-defined, and it's defined differently but at least maybe you begin by saying, what got us into this was the trailheads are freaking overcrowded.
Right,
That's not the whole deal,
What people
but that's what
perceive.
started us into this.
right.
I mean, the Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucus right now is seriously focused on the Capitol Creek tailhead.
Yeah.
And I need to tell them that there's some progress being made. They would not get that from reading what so far we've said here. And it's interesting that that the Capitol Creek Trailhead is what got this whole thing, started this whole thing, was Graham brought that to the meeting and talked about it, so.
Well, we can give
Let
that,
me
we can put
invite you
that
to
in
consider-
history.
Yeah,
Yeah, as we roll this out to the public,
But
we'll
lead
add
with
that
that.
history.
Yeah.
but lead with that.
Okay.
But I appreciate what you're saying, but I also understand what Carly is saying in that we don't want to undercut what the problems might be. It's not just that the trailheads are crowded. It's the fracturing of elk herds. It's a whole lot of other things that are going on. And so we don't want to jump the gun by saying, by defining the problem until we hear more about what the problem is.
Well, I
That's
think we
what you're
got
saying,
it
right, Carly?
where we kind of give the history of why we started this.
Mhm.
And then get into this piece that
Right.
you're talking about, like, now we gotta define it.
Yeah.
Like, this is what got us here, and now we gotta work with our partners, strengthen our partnerships to define it. And it took longer than we wanted, it always does, because you're putting so many different land managers together. And to be honest, the whole goal was to take Pickton County out of the lead role. Because in the end, it needs to be a coalition that works without us or with us. And so that's why the CPW regional coalition, and that's what she can go into next, is critical, because you don't wanna be, like, if we ever wanna get into, Garfield County and the Forest Service, we need everybody to be on this coalition and equal standing. So that's what this GPW grant is allowing.
But in reality, action is being taken, and one of our partners, the Forest Service, has already started a reservation system for camping. I mean, that didn't exist 5 years ago, so.
Correct.
That's an example of, albeit small perhaps with respect to the total magnitude of the problem, because they control the land, they've initiated a reservation system.
But does that get expanded? Does that change? Does that, here's the
Exactly.
next step.
But it's
Right.
something.
Yeah.
And they may
No.
learn that it needs to be tweaked, which I would expect it would.
And all that data will be collected, so
Okay.
it's really good.
All right.
So when you put this up so that we could read that first purple bullet point, which I think is very definitive, it helped a lot, I thought. Maybe you could read that out loud, but then did you skip some slides to get there? We've kinda
did.
interrupted your presentation.
No, it's
so
okay. I think this
I
was
don't
more,
wanna
I
miss
think
some of
this
it.
was helpful to jump to this. This is where we are and where we hope to go through this effort. And then I'm also trying to describe how we've been funded through the Regional Partnership Initiative and how we'll fit in at the statewide level with that funding. So the funding at the statewide level doesn't change this. We are on this trajectory to collect information, to get the information from Utah State's team that Chris will present, to start to talk to folks, to establish this vision and goals. And the hope is that in the end of this initial round of funding, which is actually $150,000 over 2 years, we will build this adaptive framework or start to identify, community needs, community issues, ecological indicators that we need to be aware of, and start to share this information. And Once that's complete, once we have that step done, only then will we move into developing a plan, a strategic plan, where we start to coordinate these actions across jurisdictions. So there's a lot of legwork and a lot of people to talk to in the next couple years. And I think this slide here might be helpful to describe what we plan to do in the next 2 years with this $150,000 worth of funding. So the requirements, the basic requirements that we need to meet is that we need to formalize our coalition and meet on a regular basis, provide progress reports, and participate at the statewide level. At our local level, how we're going to use this capacity funding in the first year is hiring a facilitator to engage what we're calling our recreation and conservation stakeholders, and there's a list up on the screen of who those folks are, in meaningful ways, and then also host an online or some sort of community survey to get broader feedback. This all is in addition to the work that Chris is
That's
doing.
concurrently that
Yes,
happens.
funded separately. So the 75,000 is focusing on this outreach. Chris's work happening in the field is happening through separate funding. Following these three things in the second year of funding will increase our awareness with a public event, and then publish all these findings in what I called the framework that will lead us to a strategic plan. So this is where we're going with the funding portion that we've received from the executive order at the statewide level. So we're going to back up a second here. So how does our coalition fit into the statewide? Why are we doing this? What's the meaning of this? So at the statewide level, through this executive order, CPW has been tasked with leading and organizing what they're calling a recreation and conservation statewide plan for the state of Colorado. And at the statewide level, if there is funding for these regional partnerships, and if the partnerships can identify goals and actions, those goals and actions can be elevated into a statewide plan. The hope is that the statewide plan will be wrapped up in 2026.
I hope that that meritorious effort does not slow us down in doing what we need to do here. I think that's critical, and I think, Gary, you said something along those lines earlier, that we need to keep this at a scale that's actionable for the problem that we have here, and at the same time reaching out, but not to let the latter constrain the timing on the former.
And that's exactly why, that's why we kept our area as condensed as possible.
Good.
But we're also part of this larger piece.
Good. This is a very impressive thing. I had no idea all those
Yeah,
groups
this
were
is,
happening.
this is a big deal, and the state has been pushing bigger regional pieces, and the last point is the Roaring Fork Outdoor Coalition received grant funding contingent on supporting the broader Mountain Communities Outdoor Collective. And what we're calling MCOC is the fact that we are joining with Eagle, Summit, and Grand to have a bigger coalition to share ideas, not to slow each other down.
Great.
We're
Excellent.
all our own, and so that's the
Perfect.
key to this, is to learn from others, but not. So the state is still learning, because they would rather us be a Mountain Communities Outdoor Collective, but we would never get anything done.
Right.
It's just too big, it's too much space, and so we are trying to focus on that.
I think the other thing that's important to mention here too is that through joining this coalition and these the dates for applying for and receiving these grants will really hold our feet to the fire. In this first 2 years of funding for what's called capacity building funding, the $150,000 over 2 years, they really want to see that we coordinate with federal partners. That's a goal of ours anyways. We have to show it in our annual progress reports. They want to see how we're integrating different data and the different science in terms of wildlife and habitat into our process. They want to see how we're supporting wildlife and connecting plans to actions. And so in this first 2 years of funding, this is what they want to see at the state level. So it really starts to hold us accountable to these requirements if we want to receive future funding. The next part I will mention too is after the first 2 years of funding, we are eligible then to apply for an additional $250,000 of planning to prepare that strategic plan.
Awesome. Greg?
Just wondering, will the approvals from the statewide level be contingent upon including everybody who should be in the conversation? And I'm looking at the eastern half of Garfield, or the eastern tiny section within our watershed, wondering is outreach to them or participation going to be a factor in the decision by the state? And is there any way we can approach them about perhaps considering the portion of Garfield in the Roaring Fork watershed? I'm sure it's been discussed. I don't want to go too deeply in it, but
I think what you're suggesting, and I think we've talked with CPW is, and I think after we hire a facilitator and we start to get more conversations, can we draw that boundary to include, all the way out perhaps to rifle or parachute?
right.
Given
Even
that-
Glenwood Springs.
Well, I was
Yeah.
just thinking Glenwood and
Yeah.
Carbondale, that's what he was
Right,
saying.
Glenwood
Yeah.
and Carbondale, right.
Yeah. And I think the answer is yes. Currently, their mapping is limited to counties,
Right.
just
got it.
based on their mapping capabilities. So,
Okay.
I think, recognize that our partners do extend into those areas.
Got it, okay, thanks.
But
This is the
Engaging
Mountain
them-
Coalition. That's what this is.
this is the state. So this is
That's the whole state.
this is every regional partnership that has been funded by the initiative. There's 14 total. You can see that the eastern side of the state is missing representation. But future funding of our coalition is going to be interested in how we outreach to those portions of Garfield County, but we will not be precluded from future funding
Right.
if there is a choice not to participate.
Would you mind explaining again then what the Mountain Coalition
So the
is as
Mountain-
compared to this state
Oh,
thing?
So the Mountain
Complicated.
Communities Outdoor Collective is a larger coalition of picking our collective, our coalition with Eagle County, with Grand County, and
Okay, that's what
yeah,
that was.
it's with we're trying
Okay.
to make sure that at least from our mountain communities that we're all sharing information.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
We talk about sharing, which makes sense, but in terms of implementation, is the expectation we can pursue whatever course of action we want within picking our
Yes.
watershed or picking county?
Because we're gonna be, our coalition is separate. So whatever we come up with on our coalition, we can move forward. And honestly, the state doesn't have any say really in what we do locally.
Right.
They actually are gonna support it. Matt Yamashita is part of this, and he supports us doing action. And so he's pushing us to keep this going, and let's get together and come up with a strategic plan that works. And so it's gonna help us. The reason why it's so critical, and the reason why, and I think Michael was correct when he said, like, we have to go where we started. We started because, Capitol Creek could take millions of dollars of our funding just to deal with. And then what do we do about Lanedo? What do we do about the pass? What do we do about all this? We have to be strategic because we're gonna have to come up with funding to do these projects. And so it's just gonna take a little time to make all of that happen. And the key is to be inclusive, because we're already getting calls now that this has gone public from other conservation groups and recreation groups. Oh, I want to be part of this. And I'm like, they will be. And we need to take all their ideas into this and get the public, to build into this, so.
So you have sort of like a steering committee right now, and you're gonna reach out for a stakeholders group. And could you tell us again who's in the steering committee? Is it Kevin and Matt? And
Yeah, I'll list these
Thank
out
you.
here. I have it here. Okay, so, we have Pickens County, obviously. We have City of Aspen, Parks and Recreation, Town of Snowmass Village, we have Town of Assault, Eagle County Open Space and Natural Resources, the Forest Service, Kevin Warner, and a new face you may not have met yet, Kendra. And then we have Bureau of Land Management, Colorado Parks and Wildlife. So those are the folks that we have on as coalition members.
Okay.
Now, our long list of stakeholders that we are tasking,
You don't have to go through all of them.
we're not going to go through all of them.
They're huge.
It's long.
It's
And that is why
tons.
we have, that is why we are hiring an outside facilitator to help have those conversations with those groups.
Thank you.
So as a professional facilitator, I sure wish I would've got a crack at this thing. This is,
You can. It's gonna be an RFP.
I have a conflict of interest.
Could you
But
explain,
anyway, but so,
Carly, how
We
the
have to approve
facilitator
that.
will actually facilitate? What's the mechanism, engagement process, where, maybe you're gonna cover that.
So we're not going to cover the RFP in this. The RFP will be released shortly.
Excuse me.
The suggestion that we have provided, we want to leave for room for flexibility with creative engagement ideas that come from a facilitator and evaluate those ideas. But the expectation that we are giving to a facilitator is that they host upwards of like 20 different meetings individually, either one-on-one or with combined groups of interested parties, host larger group meetings, prepare presentations that we can come back to and provide progress updates. So there's a lot of criteria that we're asking of a facilitator to help with this.
Okay, that helps.
Yeah.
so yeah, I think we might have a hard stop around 1, so
Okay.
we need to get to Chris.
The only part I'll just pull up real quick is the statewide timeline. As we mentioned, they're aiming for finishing the statewide conservation and recreation plan in 2026. So the funding that we have received for partnership and capacity building, and then, if we can continue hitting milestones and showing that we're making progress and receive planning funding, our timeline would align really well with this for our objectives to get into the statewide plan.
But that doesn't mean we can't take implementation action.
No,
Correct.
no.
At least experimentally.
Well, no, we can do whatever actions we want.
I'm saying.
Yeah, because we're our own coalition and we will move faster than the statewide coalition. It's just that if we want to continue to get funding, that's their timeline. So, but we have part right now, and I'd like to get to Chris because right now it's the city, the county, and the town of Snowmass Village that have been funding these visitor use surveys. So mostly the county, but the city and the town have also participated. And now we have $75,000 from CPW to hit that next step.
Okay. So now we'll get Chris and Noah lined up here to share their screen. And what they are going to present on are the preliminary results from the 2022 field season. Their visitor intercept surveys and the GPS tracking that they did.
And we can let them introduce themselves. Okay, Chris or Noah, you're up.
Yeah, hello. Hello, everyone. I guess, are we working okay here? Everybody can see me?
Can everyone hear him? Yep.
Great. Well, thank you for having us today to present some results from our work from last summer. I think Gary and Carly introduced the broader concepts really well. And we've collaborated with them over the last year to year and a half to design and implement this work that we'll present today. A couple of things before we get started, just some introductions. So I'm Chris Mons, I'm at Utah State University. Some of you will remember I gave an in-person presentation on some of our work about a year and a half ago. That led to the development of this work, and I've been working in this field of recreation resource science for 25 or 30 years now. I've done many studies in many parts of North America and broadly. Noah Creaney is with me today. Noah is in the last few months of completing his PhD. He will be working in my lab for a year as a postdoctoral researcher, and Noah really is kind of the lead project coordinator on this work. So we'll both be presenting today. A couple of other things. We're going to get really into the weeds today on this work and show you a lot of detail.
We don't have time to
We've
get in the
collected
weeds.
a lot of data in the context of really a preliminary investigation to try to help us understand how to best serve your needs as we proceed with the project. And that's really what we're going to present today. I don't think we're going to answer every single question either that we asked or that you will have for us today, but we'll certainly have time for that dialogue. We have a lot of data kind of in our back pocket that is not in the primary presentation today, so please feel free to bring up those questions and we can dig into that. Noah, you can
I'm
go
going to
the next
suggest
slide.
that we go an extra 10 minutes since we started late, if that's okay with everybody who's here.
Yeah, we got.
Because
time
I'd like to
today.
hear this. And
We have time at the end
is that
of the
okay
day.
with open space?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, thank you, everyone. We'll do our best to get through this. We have about 30 minutes of presentation for you, so.
Okay, good. We'll go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so a little bit on the project. As I mentioned, we've worked with the open space team to help design this, and we'll go through some of those pieces. We had some initial meetings, as some of you were present at. And again, we spent quite a bit of time working on the development of this data collection process. As a little bit of background, we've based a lot of what we've done on many, many previous studies, well-tested measurement techniques, some of which that we have developed in this lab that we've applied in many, many other locations. So last summer, we started developing the field collection work. We worked at 5 different locations, and last fall, we started doing our analysis and reporting, and we're still engaged in that process right now. Give you a little bit of a handle on our study design. Now, this is a little complicated figure. We're going to get into some of the details of this quickly, but broadly, we've designed a very far-reaching study that has both descriptive components about the visitor and evaluative components about what is occurring on the landscape, what people are experiencing. We're also trying to understand different components of the spatial use of visitor use on the landscape. Go ahead, Noah, we can get into the next step. So to drill into this a little bit more, the descriptive component is really things about the visit, about the visitor, and about the setting. This will help us understand in more detail the various characteristics of what visitors are bringing to those recreation sites, what their demographics are, and to a certain extent, what their previous experience and expectations are for the visit. You can go to the next one. We've also investigating the idea that visitors disperse on a landscape in various patterns. Understanding those patterns of use and those use levels help us understand how to manage use on the landscape from a biophysical perspective. So today we'll show you some results of some of that work. We use GPS tracking techniques in our visitor survey work. We've also worked extensively with mobile device data, and we'll present some of that today in terms of using that as a use estimation and spatial estimation technique. And finally, we'll get into some evaluative components. This is understanding the visitor's interpretation of various social and resource conditions on the landscape. whether they are experiencing crowding, whether they are experiencing conflict, and similar kinds of components like that. Okay. So again, last summer, we worked to design a study that primarily is designed to set the stage for broader work in the future. Gain some thorough but preliminary information at a smaller suite of sites. You can see the locations listed here on the map of the 5 locations that we worked in last summer. Our work consisted of a visitor intercept assessment procedure at each of these locations in order to provide an adequate sample size so we're able to do thorough statistical analysis on the findings. So we had 2 dimensions to that intercept work. One was a visitor questionnaire that visitors completed, again with very well-tested, well-documented survey questions, and a GPS unit that visitors were asked to carry during their visit to help us understand the spatial dimension and various characteristics of their physical visit. All of this was done on a voluntary basis. We always do voluntary surveys, and we can present to you in a moment the results of that. Some other things we worked on were putting trailhead counters while we were out there to get an overall use estimation rate, and also parking lot arrivals in appropriate locations. So that's the background of the study development, some of the study elements. And with that, I'll turn it over to Noah, who will dig into some of the study results that we've observed from the work from last year.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Just to start off here, as Chris showed with that conceptual model, there's a lot of results, and as you mentioned, we're going to get to a few of them. So we selected a few things to highlight today. But to start off here, just going to sort of describe some of the results, and with that, the sample and response rate to the survey. So the response rate here was exceptionally high compared to where we, when we administer these surveys in other settings, in national parks and other protected areas. We had more than 400 surveys and almost 300 GPS tracks. And this provided a sufficient sample to perform some statistical analysis and be able to describe some overall trends occurring at these sites. With that, we're going to dig in here, and we have demographic information for each site, and we just selected 2 sites here, Capitol Creek, and next I'll show you Grotto's Day Use Area, where we just wanted to highlight where we observed some very different trends occurring at these sites. So at Capitol Creek, this graph you see in the middle, the orange bars represent the number of vehicles, the blue, the number of trail users. We see this high level of vehicles compared to the number of people at this site. And on the left there, the descriptors of the demographics with respect to race, gender, education, income, and finally age. Now, conversely, at Grotto's Day Use Area, we see a higher count of the number of people compared to the number of vehicles. So this is very much, almost opposite of what we saw at Capitol Creek. Obviously, this is a site that has relatively constrained parking, but also a higher number of people per vehicle at this site. And the demographics that we see here are fairly consistent with what we observed at Capitol Creek along those same categories of race, gender, education, income, and age. Okay. So one of the items that we measured in the survey was just the experience use history, or what we call, that's the term we use to describe prior experience at a site. This is related to a range of attitudes, preferences, expectations, and behaviors. And this can be helpful to inform management about these sites. So between these two areas of grottos and smugglers, we see some very different trends with more first-time and infrequent visitors at the grottos area and more returned and consistent users at Smuggler Mountain. Now, while these are both day use type areas with fairly similar setting, biophysical, and managerial characteristics, the visitors' experience use characteristics are very different and suggest some variations maybe in how the site is managed and the visitors themselves. We also asked visitors the mode they used and distance traveled to each of these sites. Now, transportation can be a powerful tool for managers to manipulate and control site capacities and recreation use. What we saw broadly at the backcountry sites is they're primarily accessed by personal vehicles, where the urban proximate sites like Smuggler Mountain have more mixed modes. While these parking infrastructures and capacity are limited at some of the sites, alternative transportation, particularly at those urban proximate locations, can provide visitors additional options and provide increased access. And we have, you can also see on the left there the distance traveled to sites. For some of the wilderness and backcountry, visitors traveling from much further distances to arrive at those sites. And some of them, like Capitol Creek with the 14er, some real destination type settings.
How do you walk to American Lake? Wow. Like, where are you walking from?
So
The parking.
one of the items that we measured in the survey is the concept of place attachment. And this is a psychological construct related to both functional and symbolic attachments and meanings that people ascribe to place. This has been used extensively in recreation literature to help understand and predict sort of responses to management actions, support for various management decisions. So we measured these at each of the sites and along two dimensions. So there's place identity, and that has the more emotional and symbolic meanings, and the place dependence, which is the more functional attachment related to the setting, providing the necessary characteristics for their recreation experience. And we found some subtle variations when we broke this out by whether or not a visitor was a resident of Pitkin County or Roaring Fork Valley. But we see as much variation between sites. And really what this suggests is that these relationships with place and these settings are relatively complex, and they don't always align well with some categories that we like to use or might seem intuitive to categorize and characterize visitors. Okay, so next we're going to move into some of these evaluative type components that we had in the survey. The first are these coping behaviors. These are behaviors used by recreationists to deal with crowding or conflict. And the two plots here, these are means for these scale items at each of these sites of American Lake and Smuggler. The dot represents the mean and the confidence interval around that mean there. And what we see at both American Lake and Smuggler is that about half the time visitors are employing some form of coping behavior, whether that's avoiding places, planning for different times of day, earlier in the season, or visiting during the weekdays or weekends. At both of these sites, we see that visitors are relatively sensitive to limited parking and, about half the time modifying their behavior to avoid crowds. What this suggests is that visitors are able to cope or manage with some of these conditions by adjusting their behavior, either by the time they're recreating, of time of day, time of week, time of year even, or the location that they recreate at. Similarly, we asked visitors to evaluate some statements about the facilities and their experience with respect to the conditions they experienced. Visitors reported that the facilities were satisfactory and sufficient to accommodate the current levels of use. We did see some signals of conflict among visitors at Smuggler Mountain compared to Capitol Creek, and a slightly higher indication that other visitors affected their experience. But broadly, many of these facility type evaluations on this type of scale, we would say are good or relatively high evaluations. Okay. So another of the items we used in the survey was this recreation experience preference scale. This is a relatively complex figure here, but I'll walk you through this. This was measured by asking survey respondents 27 questions that relate to their motivations for recreating. And this is a useful tool to help managers understand what they're managing for and how to provide opportunities to satisfy those motivations. So we conducted some statistical analysis to sort of understand the underlying motivations and found these 5 key motivations of tranquility in nature, family reflection, risk and adventure, exercise, fitness, and socializing. And we further interpreted and synthesized these results and derived 3 sort of motivation typologies for the sites that we sampled. So first, a nature-based recreation and adventure at American Lake and Capitol Creek, 2 of the wilderness-type trailheads. Motivation that was more fitness and social related at Smuggler Mountain. And finally, at Grotto's Day Use Area and Tom Blake, it's more mixed. So not necessarily more of one or the other, but a combination. So hang on to these typologies and these ideas because we see some relationships between these motivations and visitor movement or their spatial behavior that we measured by asking visitors to carry a GPS unit during their visit. So as Chris mentioned, we distributed GPS units to visitors. They would take with them on their visit and then return to complete the survey. These data can be used to summarize and characterize their behavior and patterns of use. So here at American Lake, most visitors spend about 3.5 hours and reach the lake. It's around 11,000 feet. And we see that visitors spend a portion of their visit stopped, potentially viewing scenery or nature and resting, which complements the nature adventure motivation typology that we observed at this site. Now, alternatively, at Smuggler Mountain, most visitors hike to the observation deck, which is about 1.4 miles, with few stops where the moving time is very close to their total time. And these behaviors also reflect the fitness and exercise motivation typology that we mentioned earlier for this site. An additional benefit of this GPS data, as Chris mentioned earlier, is that when we can understand some of these spatial patterns of visitor use, they correspond to the patterns of ecological or resource disturbance at these sites. So at Grotto's Day Use Area, we see very dispersed use across the site. And obviously, while there's some resistant substrates like bedrock, there's really diffuse and at times intense areas of visitor use outside of the designated trails at this site. So this data can also be useful to managers to help monitor this recreation use and keep those resource conditions within the desirable range. So one of the questions we asked visitors was whether or not what technology they're using, but the primary indicator of interest here was whether or not they were using a smartphone. And we sort of asked this in 2 different ways, with whether they carried a smartphone or used a smartphone camera. In any case, 72% of visitors often, always, or sometimes have a smartphone with them while they're recreating. 85% report smartphone use while recreating. So really broadly what this suggests is that most visitors are carrying mobile devices, which then can be used to help monitor visitor use through that mobile device data. So in this section, I'm presenting some results from this tool we're using to collect these estimates from Streetlight. And one thing to
Is
note here
Streetlight
is
the
that
name of the app or the tool? It's nothing to do with streetlights, correct? Just want to make sure.
Right. Yeah. Streetlight is a
We're not
company
putting streetlights up
who
there.
purchases and processes this data. I mean, functionally, this is trillions of points of data. They use some algorithms to provide these estimates of use at the locations of interest. So.
No, the only thing I'd add there is Streetlight is frequently used by traffic engineering consultants, and so therefore the name Streetlight. It is now, and so therefore the name Streetlight. Chris and Noah are using it, using the mobile device data.
Right. Yeah. I imagine that Streetlight probably came from their history of use among transportation engineers. So in any case, this data provides us the opportunity to sort of look back in time at these sites. So what we're looking at here is Smuggler and Hunter Mountain during the same month of July between 2019 and 2021. And we can see that there is some variation in weekly visitation trends throughout the years. Suggests maybe in 2021 there's sort of a shift to more early week visitation, and certainly the year 2020 provided a shock to and introduced all sorts of novel patterns of visitation. An additional benefit of this tool is the ability, because much of the data is based on census data, that it can provide some estimates of demographics at these sites and provide the opportunity to monitor visitation for equity and inclusion. In this figure here, we're just demonstrating, throughout the years, you can compare the income of visitors along this scale. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it back to Chris here. And
250 is nothing, right?
Yeah, thanks, Noah. Of course, we're working with Gary and Carly and others at Open Space to develop and design the next year's work. Our current plan is to move forward with the same data collection protocols at 10 additional sites in summer, coming this summer in July. This will give us an opportunity to very broadly examine a wide range of sites, combining these 2 years of data collection, and to really understand recreation use across the entire project area. And so we look forward to working on completing the process of getting that study going over the next couple of weeks, and then being again in the field this coming summer. You go to the next slide. With that, just want to thank the whole Open Space crew for all of their help in getting the study going, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Thank you. A couple observations. It seems that I was looking at it thinking, yeah, this makes such perfect sense. And I thought, well, that's why this is such valuable, things that I understand about our watershed. What's that?
Your speaker on? I don't think he could hear you very well.
My mic's on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Can hear you fine. Yeah.
Just thinking, looking at the grottos, the map of the grottos was fascinating because it showed the incidental use, the yellow dots, compared, then showing the actual grottos themselves in the heavy extreme use. How will we use that information? My experience with the grottos, having gone up there pretty much every year for the last lifetime, is that things like the lichens and the mosses and all that have just been completely decimated in those areas of light use, because those are the bedrock, and they've just been walked on and trod upon until there is nothing there any longer. So I'll look at that and I'll think, okay, well, how will this data really be used, and do we have enough information from this to really help us? That was the one kind of a question and an observation. And the second was, clearly it looks like having an interstate highway or a state highway traversing proximate to these areas brings incidental visitors who, it's their first time, they'll probably never come back again, sort of thing. And it shows me that the data is being accurately recorded. And I'm just wondering, is that being, proximity to a highway factored in? Is that part of the conversation? I guess it must be. I'm just trying to get a grip on how this can be used and how we can take advantage of it going forward. Thank you.
Thanks for those questions. Let's deal with the ecological disturbance at grottos first. So there are a number of ways of quantifying ecological disturbance. We could actually be doing measurements in the field to do that. We'd be happy to do that if that's needed in the future. The data that we shared with you today is just documenting the spatial dimension of the visitor use there. What that tells us is that visitors are dispersing, as you noted. That low level or even moderate level of use can have ecological consequences, like on lichens and other sensitive species on the ground cover. A general finding in the ecological literature in terms of interpreting that for management is that you can minimize ecological disturbance by channeling visitor use into smaller spatial areas, confining that use to hardened surfaces and develop trail situations, and that minimizes the overall ecological disturbance. Oftentimes documenting that to begin with is a first step at creating a different management strategy to help minimize that disturbance. And so this data is part of that.
Great, thank you.
Did I get at that? Did I answer that?
That's great, thanks.
Any other questions for Chris?
The second part of your question, we haven't directly taken into account the transportation network as a causal factor in the distribution of use, but that's an interesting question. Obviously, that does play a role in visitor access. I think right now we're at a point of just documenting home locations and things like that. Each individual arrival, we can do that via streetlight in terms of where folks are coming from and how they're arriving at sites. So clearly that transportation infrastructure is playing a role there as well.
Great, thanks.
Oh, yeah, Howie.
Hi, Chris, hi. Great presentation. What were the surprises that you may have noticed that you hadn't anticipated?
Yeah, well, I think we always try to look at the data as objective as we can. I think not being from the area, we didn't really have many preconceptions. But I will say there are a couple of things that do stand out. First of all, I think as Noah presented, some of these visitor observable characteristics, such as whether they're residents or non-residents, seem to be playing less of a role in things like motivations and experience histories. And so I think it's important from the data. One of the things that it's telling us is that Pitkin County has a big reach in terms of the kinds of folks that are participating in outdoor recreation experiences and gaining those benefits. And so that's a big finding from things there. I think the intensity of use is interesting as well. And some of these locations are very intensively used That's always surprising when you really get the data. Again, you all are experiencing this firsthand much more than we are. And so those findings were also quite interesting. We all frequently find a lot of similarities in studies in parks and protected areas. And so I think that was one of the other things. If you look at other studies that have done work on motivations, for example, many of those same concepts come out, but with different levels of intensity. And so that was a very interesting finding that, of course, we'll continue to pursue because of its management implications.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Oh, yeah, Michael?
Yeah, just, this goes back to my first comment about why we're doing this and making that why clear to the public. What I'd like to do is for us to be very careful and critical about the look and content of the information that we take to the public, which I think is going to be critical. For example, that presentation was terrific when we had a commentary behind it. But when you use terms like streetlight, that's going to be completely opaque to anybody who didn't have it explained to them as Greg asked the question. So that presentation needs to be significantly edited to make it palatable and understandable by folks who aren't deep into this. And similarly, I'd say the same thing about your presentation. I would invite you all, both the academics and the OSC staff, to think about not only how we collect the data and understand it so we can make better decisions, but how we take this to the public. So I would invite you to consider making it understandable to your grandmother who lives in Old Snowmass and happens to be a contemporary of mine and isn't deep into this like all of you are. I beg pardon?
Live in the same house?
No, next door. So I'm talking about messaging and understandability because we need to bring the public along with this process. What we've seen so far, and I know it's early and it's all that, and all of what we've seen is really good, is that what we've seen so far is not palatable to the public. And we need to make it that way as we proceed. And we're only just beginning, and I understand that, and that's fine.
That's our goal.
Good.
Good point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Seems
Grant.
to me we're in a data collection stage here, and there is a ton of data, and it is hard to
Yep.
understand. And I hear what you're saying, but I think that'll come later. I think all of this has to be analyzed and the lessons drawn from it, and that's when, the public, I think, would become more in tune or be presented to the public. And
I think the point we can take away from this is that our initial focus is on really broad public engagement, the field research that the Utah State University team is doing, strengthening partnerships across our jurisdiction. That's the focus for these initial efforts. And I think we can do a better job of describing that.
We took that's our takeaway from this was an update, and the takeaway is to kind of meld this into something that's more palatable for the public, and to be able to be understood as we start to move out to the public. We'll take that and really get to the next steps. You guys are the first ones to see. Well, I didn't see all this either, so this is the first time we're getting a really good look at some of this data, and it's just getting processed.
Good.
So
Good.
We'll get there.
Thank you, Noah and Chris. Really appreciate it. It was nicely presented.
Nice seeing you again, Chris.
Yeah. Come again.
Thank you.
I'm going
That's
to
it.
adjourn.
You need anything else?
No.
All
You want something else?
right. So many
I'm
things,
adjourned.
Gary.
I know, I'm waiting.
We're adjourned. Coach.
Kicked out.
Okay, thanks, Open Space. Nice to
Carly?
see you guys.
Yeah.
I particularly like what the response might be.
And Chris, before you go, can you hear me?
What were
Yes.
the surprises?
Didn't you
So
do
as
a
we
Southern
go through this,
California,
and he said,
Laguna-
of course, we're
the Laguna
neutral
Beach area?
academics, and so we weren't surprised. In
Yes,
effect.
we've been
But
working out there
you
for
all are
about the
living
last
it with
5
us, so-
years.
So I want you to know, after
part
you
of
did your
our-
presentation to us before, when I was down there, I toured some of those areas a lot more closely after hearing from you. So I thank you for
Oh,
that.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great place, actually. Been very fascinating for us to work in that setting, that
I'm
urban
gonna take-
proximate setting.
Yeah,
Imagine
I especially did Crystal Cove and that
Taking you
section
a
of,
while. They won't
yeah,
miss
because
you.
that's one of my favorite places, but I ventured a little further this last time I was there. So thank you
Yeah,
for
no.
sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, that's been a great study, and we're hopefully going to finish that up in the next year.
Yeah, I go down a couple times a year and I think about you when I'm there.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Nice to meet you, Noah.
Okay, we're back, and we're going to Raleigh and Jordana to hear about our tobacco retail license policy proposal.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Give me a moment while I share my screen. I think I need to be.
This thing turns off all the time. Am I getting this? No, it did just come in while we were meeting. I'll open it. I'm opening it.
Alrighty. Are we ready to begin?
Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Raleigh Backrack. I'm the Health Promotion Program Administrator at Picken County Public Health, and I do tobacco work in the Valley, and today we will be talking about a tobacco retail license policy proposal. So I wanted to start off with a timeline. I'm not going to go into this much detail, but do want to highlight a few things that have happened in the past few years. So in 2016, the FDA issued final rule giving agency oversight of tobacco products. And then shortly after, we started seeing localities throughout Colorado, especially Aspen, start adopting these local tobacco control policies. So in 2017, Aspen adopted a local T21, which raises the minimum sale age to 21, a local tobacco retail license, which I'll refer to as a TRL, as well as a tobacco tax. And then by 2019, we had a lot of our neighboring localities follow suit. So by 2019, we really had Aspen, Snowmass, Carbondale, and Glenwood kind of have this four-pronged approach. So they had T21, TRL, a flavor ban, and then a price increase. There were some conversations at the Pickens County level, and in 2020, Pickens County passed a T21 at a local level, and we also implemented a tobacco tax as well. I also want to highlight in 2020 that we had a state bill, House Bill 1001 pass, which really laid out licensing and county authority to license tobacco products. Fast forward to 2022, there was some state conversations about a statewide flavor ban. It did not go through. I had also conducted a local flavor ban evaluation, and we did find some gaps that I'll get into a little bit more. And then at the end of 2022, I also presented similar information that I'm presenting to you all today about a TRL to our Pickens County Board of Health to kind of get their approval. There are 2 thumbs up, and so everything in this presentation today has been approved by our Board of Health.
Give us the acronyms again, just so the audience
Yeah,
will know.
of course. So T21, if you can see my mouse, that's the minimum sales age is 21. It's also a federal law now, but we have protection at the local level because we have it in local legal language. TRL, which is kind of what we want to hear about, or what we want to know today, is tobacco retail license.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So I did mention this in the earlier slide, but this is just laid out where the 4 localities in our valley have that 4-pronged approach. And then today, we are looking at a TRL for Pickens County. The flavor ban is blacked out on the county side because under state legislative language right now, we don't have that authority at the county level, or else we'd probably be talking about that today. So as I mentioned, I conducted a local flavor ban evaluation with a few other key partners, and we were really looking to understand the implementation process throughout the valley, and we started to hear that there was some lack of regional tobacco control, which has led to jurisdictional shopping. And so really the evaluation reveals the need to align with other local tobacco control policies to reduce this jurisdictional shopping. So to address this, we may consider adopting a TRL license. I want to point out, I'm not here to just push policy through. We have this finding and then some more data that I'll get into that really paints a good picture of why we should be pushing something like this through.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So jurisdictional shopping, somebody's in Aspen, they can't get what they want, but they can go to a tobacco retailer in Pickens County.
Correct.
And perhaps they find it there because they don't have the.
You don't have
Possibly,
Maybe they go
yes,
farther than that.
possibly. And
Yeah.
I would even add, the valley is so small and we're all
Right.
so close. So an unincorporated Pickens County tobacco retail license will help maybe
Right.
reduce this jurisdictional shopping. By no means it will stop
Right.
because let's say, for instance, Catherine's store, that's in Garfield County, unincorporated. We hear a lot, like that there
Right
might be
across the
some
line. Right.
shopping there. So
And with that, and the second part of that was just how many, there are only like two or three in the.
Yes, there's, we just had one join a month ago, so we have 4 unincorporated tobacco retail license in unincorporated Picken.
Can you tell me what they are?
Yes, I will.
Oh, you're getting there.
Yes, it's going to be on the slide in one moment.
I have a question
Yeah.
about the TRL.
Mm-hmm.
So the city of Aspen already has the program, Snowmass and Basalt. See, I didn't get that in here, and that was gonna be my first question. Be ridiculous for us to do it alone. We'd have to do it in conjunction. So now we're flipping that, and it's ridiculous for us to not have it when they're all doing it.
I would agree, yeah. I will also, and this is in my presentation too, but there is a state required TRL now after these localities did pass their own. I believe that was in 2019 or 2020. But we're still seeing, I'll go into some data, local data, that really shows that maybe we just need a little more enforcement in this framework to help mitigate this issue.
I think we need enforcement help from the state, not local, but we can talk about that.
So quickly, a TRL, you know, there's, it really provides the basis of enforcement, comprehensive enforcement laws. And so we, with the TRL, would be able to enforce our local T21. We could look at ad restrictions. It's just a good framework to have, especially since we already have local tobacco control policies in place. So why implement a local TRL? We still see that tobacco use is still the leading preventable cause of death, disability, and disease in Colorado, with more than 5,000 Coloradans losing their lives to smoking-related illnesses every year. When we look at big tobacco, they spend over $7 billion annually on ads and promotional expenses in the country. And their marketing strategies are very inequitable. They aggressively target certain populations, including young people, racial and ethnic communities, the LGBTQ+ community, and women. When we look at a license and its effectiveness, we do see that a strong license has been associated with youth being less likely to start using these products compared to a weak grade license or no license at all. Licensing is an approach that will ensure that retailers operate legally, ethically, and responsibly. Local licensing of tobacco retailers successfully supports strong enforcement and reduces the number of illegal sales to minors. So more on the why, and this is really getting into some local data here. So what we have in front of us is a chart from Healthy Kids Colorado survey, and specifically from the Aspen High School. And the question here is percentage of students who vape one or more times in the last 30 days. And we're comparing 2017 data in the Navy to 2019 to 2021. And of course, we see that initial decrease from 2017 to 2019. And we may be able to conclude that some of that decrease was maybe because of that local control that we saw in 2017, 2019, 2018. And then we see that plateau, right? Staying around a 30.2% in 2021. And some people might say, at least it's not going up. But if we compare that 2021 data to our region average and to our Colorado average, so I'll draw everyone's attention to this middle question here. It's the same question of percentage of students who used an electronic vapor product in the last 30 days. We're about 10% higher than our region, and we're about almost 15% higher than our state average. And then if we look to the left, we're looking at percentage of students who smoked cigarettes on one or more of the past 30 days. Again, Aspen High School, we're in that navy blue. We're almost at 19% compared to a 3.3% from Colorado state average. The last question on the right is percentage of students who feel it would be sort of easy or very easy to get electronic vapor products if they wanted. Aspen High School students report, there's about 70.2% of Aspen High School students report that it's pretty easy to get these products if they want.
Could I make a
Yeah.
quick comment? Just on anecdotal data from my spies at the high school, they think the numbers on the first and second are much higher than what's reflected in HKCS. I was told that it's at least double the number of students who used electronic vapor product in the last 30 days, double. So but it's an anecdotal, biased comment from a kid at the school.
Yeah.
But I just wonder, how accurate is this data? One, are we really that much worse off than the rest of the state? And two, is it really as good as this makes it look?
Right. And from my understanding, Healthy Kids Colorado survey data, it is anonymous, and I think it is somewhat reliable. Part of my work is working with the school and school administrators, school leaders. So again, it's just I'm not only passing policy, I'm trying to make sure that there's quit support at the school and everything like that. So I've heard the data is quite reliable, but
I'll go with yours, but just thought I'd say that.
And the other thing that might be happening with the perception, right? One kid, and one person's perception, is the mentality is usually they perceive more is happening than actually is. So when we get this data, one popular thing to do with it is do kind of a social norming campaign to say, even if 18% of kids are smoking, that means that 82% aren't. And that's more of the norm than what it's perceived that everyone's smoking.
Thank you.
CRMS study just recently mirrored that same thing, Jordana, that the kids thought that 50% of kids were drinking, but it was really like 20. Those aren't the right numbers, but it was that kind of thing. Okay?
Yeah, so my concern has always been, looking at these numbers for many, many years that I've been here on this board, and I'm going to give Aspen High School kids a lot of credit in this, is that they're more honest. And they're more likely to be honest in these evaluations. And I'm saying this compared to other regions and other parts of the state. That's just the nature, I think, of the kids here. They're taking a survey. They're going to tell you like it is. And Greg may be right. There's probably a skew there with people who aren't either taking part in the survey but I think one of the reasons that we are higher than the rest, because I think smoking in Colorado, issues with youth, is much higher than these numbers. If you go to other areas of the state or the region, you tend to see more, especially in some of the front range communities of farmlands. It's just how they grow up. It's just different.
Any more questions?
No, but thank you.
Okay. So kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of this presentation today. So a Pitkin County tobacco retail license would require that all retailers who sell tobacco in unincorporated Pitkin County hold a Pitkin County tobacco retail license as well as a state license. And our county license would specify a fee and penalty structure, retailer education, signage, age of clerk, possibly point of sale strategies that I'll get into, and the basis for enforcement such that a license can be revoked or suspended for noncompliance. And so who would be affected? Here is the list. So we have the Conoco and the ABC. We have Phillips 66 off of Woody Creek. And then we have two in Old Snowmass, the Snowmass Ranch Liquors. That one just joined, just started selling tobacco about a month or two ago. And then the Old Snowmass Market.
They're approximate, right next door to each other.
They're right next door to each other, yeah.
So 3 geographical locations.
Exactly, yes. I will point out Redstone, they used to sell tobacco, Redstone General, under new ownership. Last I talked to the owner, they were not planning to do that.
I'm sure that's true. That's Oriana.
Alrighty, so that last slide was really just a generic, kind of straightforward TRL proposal, and it can be effective. But if we want to be more effective, we could possibly incorporate some point of sale options. And so the top 3 in the green box in this slide are what we recommend, Pitkin County Public Health and our Board of Health. The last 2 I just wanted to share with you all that they are options. They're not equitable and not recommended. So we'll focus on the 3 that are in the green box.
When you say not recommended, you mean not necessarily recommended.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, you might recommend them, but you're not at this time necessarily recommending them.
Yeah, I think public health, we are pretty, on it with the 3. The other two are just, I don't see as an equitable option
Okay.
to implement. Yeah.
Thank you.
So the first one would be capping or limiting the number of retailers. That's pretty self-explanatory. So Public Health and our Board of Health recommend capping it at what we're at right now, which is 4. Product placement would be, an example of this would be keeping tobacco and nicotine products in secure staff-only locations. Public Health and our Board of Health recommend restricting products from being visible to consumers. And then the last one would be restricting tobacco ads. So currently the Colorado state law prohibits advertising an electronic smoking device that's visible from outside the retailer store. So Public Health and our Board of Health would recommend restricting the place and manner of tobacco and nicotine ads, which would include in-store ads. Any questions here? Okay. I will go through this really quickly just for the sake of time. Suggested specifics of the license is in green. So we would have a licensing fee that would be covering the administrative and enforcement costs. Age of clerk would be 18. Enforcement and compliance would be in collaboration with the Pickens County Sheriff's Department, which I'll get into in one more slide. And then we have kind of the offense structure, first, second, third, and fourth within a 36-month period. Of course, it's getting stronger as the offenses go on. So it starts off with a fee or a short suspension all the way up to revocation.
So I have a question about the age of 18. So you have to be 21 to buy tobacco, but you can sell it when you're 18? Is that the state law?
Yes,
That's a little strange.
it is.
So I
We
have
could change that too. This is the suggested.
I have a question about enforcement. Are there any other agencies that can do the enforcement other than our sheriff's department?
So I've heard public health throughout Colorado, public health officials have done that. Public environmental health has done that in the past. And so I've actually, Jordana and I've had conversations with our sheriff.
Yeah, I'm
So
just concerned about, we've developed this great relationship with our local law enforcement, the PD or the sheriffs, and having kind of a safe relationship with our public. And I just want to make sure we're not going to get a big brother image of oversight. So I think we need to be careful in that. But I can see that you have more discussion, so I'm sorry I opened it up too soon.
No, you're okay. I can jump straight into the enforcement piece. So we've had conversations, and it sounds like there can definitely be a partnership between public health and the sheriff's office via compliance checks. So kind of what you're saying, we wouldn't be doing underage buys at this time to kind of keep that relationship.
And that means you sneak somebody in who's underage and try to bust the
So
retailer.
we would leave that to the state.
Okay.
That's the Department of Revenue.
Yeah.
So we can
You need to
maintain
come
our-
up if you're gonna. Can I bring him up?
Sure.
Clean this up later. Yeah, we'll leave that to the State Department of Revenue to do the underage buys.
And thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that.
And I would just add,
Thank
so last month, we even had a retailer go out of compliance from the state. The state found them that they were not in compliance. So, I think this is a way for our departments to work together to make sure these retailers have what they need so that they can pass these underage buys, right? These inspections that we call it.
Education's always the key.
Question
Exactly.
about, if the state determines that they're out of compliance, is that a strike against their permit with us?
No, not necessarily. That's why we would really be always in communication with the Department of Revenue. So if we were to implement a local TRL and we found someone, a retailer, with a first offense, we would let them know. It wouldn't necessarily mean that the retailer has to pay our offense and the state one as well, but it's just so that the state's aware.
I have a question too. So if all these kids are vaping at least once in the last 30 days, can we assume that they're purchasing the products illegally, or do we have any information about that?
It's hard to tell. I mean, I think that the fact that one of our retailers, they were out of compliance, might mean that potentially a few underage
That's where you go.
students might be able to purchase, and that's why we want to make sure that, you know, they know how to check a real ID. We don't have any strong data that says one way or the other.
Are vaping products available online?
Yes, but for Colorado, it's quite strict. You have to actually have a ID, like a real ID. Not to say that a student can get it from their older sibling, but the state actually does. They do a lot of work online to make sure everything's in compliance.
So the fee for the license would come back to where? A different fund now, so we could help fund both public health to do some of the monitoring and education, and if we needed to bring in the SO for something, or how's that gonna work?
Exactly. It really will just cover the administrative costs. And I've had some early conversations with the Pickens County Administrative Building to make sure that kind of it can fit in with the liquor license if it were to pass.
So that would be Jeanette?
Yes.
Okay, we need to make sure
Exactly.
Jeanette has the capacity to do one more license.
We had preliminary conversations, and it sounds like they might have that.
All 4 of them.
Yes, all 4. And so it would go to that, as well as, yes, of course, the enforcement side of things, making sure we're covering those costs. I want to capture the retailer input that I went out and spoke to all these retailers. So I did hear that one retailer voiced concerns about license and renewal fees, while others did not voice too many concerns regarding these potential costs. Majority did not voice concerns regarding local enforcement coming in. As far as the point of sale strategies, product placement, this is no surprise. The majority voiced concerns that restrictions of product placement would be a huge barrier, such as lack of storage and office space. Retailers should have the right to show what they are selling. For restricting in-store ads, majority did not voice concerns regarding that. And then capping, one retailer did voice wanting legal language around the right to have licensing rights if the store was sold. From my understanding, licenses are non-transferable, and that's not a very equitable practice, so just wanted to put that out there.
Great, thanks.
Majority asked for bilingual resources and training materials if a TRL were to be passed.
So the way that City Market has it behind the customer service area, that's according to a state regulation?
And the city's TRL.
So we're saying that you can't,
Carbondale has a local TRL, yes.
but so you're saying that we are thinking about making it so you can't see it at all?
Yes, and that's why I did want to,
Yeah, 'cause-
outline very clearly that we understand that it could be a huge barrier.
So like under the counter sort of.
Yeah, or
Yeah,
in an
but-
office space.
I don't have a problem if it's like, if you walk across the locals corner, it's behind, it's just not, in some places, you have to go up to the customer service desk. Yeah, I don't mind that, but some of these places are small, and it would, and then it's kind of stuck in a back corner and not as secure as it is, I think, right now, when it's behind the cash register, but.
And of course, the reason why we have restricting product placement is because there's a lot of evidence that show if you're not seeing that, you're less likely to buy,
I think the advertising and the signage can go, but I think we need to be we have to maybe give it a little more thought as to placement of the product.
And I would just say, the tobacco companies have thought this through so that even, when you see a wall of these products all lined up, it ends up, kind of walking that line as advertisement. I think that's why this is the strongest policy with the public health, and we do bring those, the voices of the retailers and the concerns here for discussion.
And what about the 2 retailers that are now side by side in Old Snowmass? I mean, we're saying you can't be side by side, so.
No, they didn't.
We didn't say that.
Okay, that was the thing you said,
Yeah.
that would not be
The two that-
equitable. Okay, just
Exactly.
want to clarify that. Thanks.
Okay, So to summarize, the recommendation, Pickens County Public Health and our Pickens County Board of Health proposes that the BOCC consider recommending a county-wide tobacco retail license that would require every retailer that sells tobacco and nicotine in unincorporated Pickens County to hold a local license in addition to the state. So those first few bullet points, really, that again is the framework of a normal TRL. And then we have those point of sale strategies that we could possibly include. For the sake of time, I'm going to jump to the next slide. I don't know how much time I have left, so kind of opening it up for further discussion. Of course, I think the first one, any questions, but to see if our BOCC would even consider a TRL, and if so, then I think we can move into those point of sale strategies.
I would support this. I'd support the whole thing. I think the placement's important. If we're gonna do this, we need to take it fully seriously, and I think that makes the sense. I did have one question regarding, you can't order delivery of nicotine products, can you?
You can't
say,
alcohol.
You can't. call
Right,
it-
no.
Okay, that's a state.
Not that I'm aware of.
Statewide, yeah, just wanted to make sure that wasn't something that just slipped by me. Thank you.
You support this?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I do too.
Especially since I know the city and Snowmass and Basalt are in it. It didn't make any sense if they weren't, and they're ahead of us. But why do you think that we need both state and local TRLs?
I think the evidence that we have from the flavor ban evaluation, I know that's a flavor ban, but we did hear so much, like so many participants were saying there's just a lot of lack of regional tobacco control policy in place. Paired that with the Healthy Kids Colorado survey data.
But if we have a TRL, we can't control flavor.
Correct.
We have to work on that, because I think we should be able to.
And so I'm hopeful that the state will be able to bring another House bill, introduce another state flavor ban. And if that were the case, we could pass our own flavor ban. You know, if we have that legal language, we would have to have a TRL in place to be able to pass a flavor ban.
So let us know what we can do with help with the state to do that, because
Thank you.
that's critical, I think.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Michael. Is this going to increase the sort of surveillance time from your officers? Are they going to have to go to these stores now on a regular basis, or?
It would be a partnership with them as far as the compliance checks. It wouldn't take much time away from their normal deputy duties.
Are you imagining that it would be like a regular check on the stores rather than getting a call or something?
It would be pre-planned. We would come up with a date and a time, and we'd hit 2 stores, and the 2 down Valley, obviously easy to hit together. Again, I think the time sacrifice is worth it, and there hardly is any sacrifice.
Okay, great, thank you.
I would also mention best practice would be going to do compliance checks only twice a year.
Yeah.
Especially with the state coming in randomly. I think that will, and with public health, you know, I could even just go down for retail education, not necessarily do a compliance check, but just checking in.
Yeah. Or you might have to respond to a call occasionally,
Yep.
right?
A
Like
parent who
some
said, my
parent,
kid's
yeah.
been driving.
Yeah.
And I know that the Department of Revenue, and then maybe around X Games, which is usually, was very active in the community, because now you have to show your ID when you get a can of beer at the grog shop, even if you're my age.
Oh, I see. I was like,
Been carding you
haven't you
again?
always had to
They're
go?
carding again, so everybody be aware, take your driver's license in when you go to get that bottle of wine at the end of the day.
What else do you need from us?
I think that's all I need. I think next steps would be a regular session with ordinance language.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Great.
Well, we'll look
Well
forward to
done.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank you
time.
very
Thank
much.
you all.
Thanks, Michael, for being
Great
here.
to see you, Raleigh.
Nice to see you.
And I want to add that they did a great job at the high school a few months ago with their nicotine education. It floored me, the amount of nicotine in these vape pens compared to a cigarette. It's
Great.
it's crazy.
The
They did a
addictive
great
nature
job.
of it, yeah.
Trying to figure out where to use that next group of money so we can bring back the QUIT program locally.
All right.
Thank you.
We're going to keep moving because we're behind by quite a bit. So we're gonna have Connie come up and talk to us about the first quarter budget supplemental requests.
We got time at the end of the day, so we're good.
We have
I have to be out the door at
executive
4:30.
session.
I know, but we'll,
I'm gonna have to be gone by
that's-
4:30,
Really?
keeping us on schedule.
Not very well.
you are?
That's why we're behind.
That's why we're in trouble. We let Greg keep us on schedule.
Welcome, Connie.
Good afternoon. Just a moment, I'll get set up.
All right, we must be very important today to have all these people in the room.
I've been looking around trying to figure it out.
It's called money. It's called money. Connie, it's been so long since we've seen you.
So this is the beginning, isn't it? Actually, no, you're not coming back for this is just
This
supplemental.
is just
stuff,
supplemental.
But still, feels like the beginning.
No, we're not doing budget yet, Greg.
Seriously, months away.
Okay, there we go. We have a number of supplemental requests today, and we have, as you can see, staff here to give you a summary of their requests and then answer any questions you have. So we'll just jump right in. And the first request, we have Jeanette Jones here.
You're on your own.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you, Jeanette?
Good. Well, thank you for your time. Yeah, we are requesting a $10,000 supplemental request. The reason for this is we have a clerk to the board now, Julia Ely, who is leaving the county. We want to put her in bubble wrap, but and keep her here. But she's going to pursue, planning on pursuing other endeavors and her education in law school. So every other year, there is a reevaluation period with the assessor's appeal of the assessor's valuations, and this year is that reevaluation year. We budgeted $15,000 for clerical help for that. We're expecting quite a few folks to come forward with their appeals. And then in thinking about it, we thought, well, now if Julia's leaving the county, and maybe it would make more sense to devote that $15,000 for clerical help, add a $10,000 supplemental to it, and thank you, Connie, for you helping me with those figures, and go ahead, start recruiting and get hopefully a successful, good candidate in line for that position. And he would have that opportunity for Julia and I's training from early summer, and then they'll also move into the Board of Equalization process and get that training. Julia has been doing Board of Equalization for 5 years, so that training would be very, very valuable, and clerk to the board for 2 years. So we thought this would be an excellent opportunity to get a candidate hired and have that advantage of all that training. So,
Go ahead.
For me, there's no question. And I'm sorry to see Julia leave, of course, but as long as we can capture as much of Julia's brain power before she goes, I think it's a great opportunity, along with yours, of course, Jeanette.
Connie, this will come back to us again? For
Yeah,
approval?
first
Tomorrow.
reading is tomorrow, and then second reading on the 22nd.
22nd, okay, thanks. 22nd, okay.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
is that it?
that was the first.
Well, that was easy
There's a
peasy.
lot of people in
I
here
just
ready
nipped
to
it
come
right
and
in the
talk to us
bud
about
for you there.
I haven't been here for a while.
Thank you, Jeanette.
Usually it's not. What's that?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Oops. I think this is.
Next.
All right.
Next victim.
Okay. The next is actually a request that came through a decision by the Board of County Commissioners, and it's for a contribution to wildfire camera detection systems. So the board heard a presentation of this in their January 24th meeting and was favorable towards a contribution. So this would be a $40,000 contribution from the Board of County Commissioners to the Aspen Fire Protection District. And then in 2023, it's just a straight contribution. And then moving forward, an IGA would be developed if the project is to move forward on an annual basis.
But they pass it on to Pano. This is Pano, right?
Yeah.
The IGA would be written not with any specific vendor mentioned in it, but as a collaboration to provide this type of service. I think there could be possibilities available.
And it was a one-time, because I know they were asking for multiple, so we did it for 1 year and bring it back and we'll discuss it.
Yes, this is a one-time contribution right now, and then will be brought back in the budget preparation for 2024 if it's to be an ongoing program, if an IGA is developed.
Okay.
Great.
Yep,
We've seen it and talked about it at
Quite a
length,
bit.
I think, so
Okay.
I'm thumbs up for me.
Yep.
All right. The next supplemental request also deals with wildfire protection. Is Valerie here or on file?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, Valerie.
Hi,
Hello,
Valerie.
everyone. I'm Valerie McDonald. I'm the Pitkin County Emergency Manager, and I'm here to let you know that the Pitkin County has a community wildfire protection plan. It was last updated and adopted in 2014. The plan essentially deals with our wildfire risk in the county as it pertains to lives, property, and infrastructure. So the reason I'm here today is the Forest Service, Colorado State Forest Service, recently stated that any plans older than 10 years are outdated and need to be updated in order to be prioritized for any grant funding that may be coming down. And we've all heard of the Infrastructure Act. We would not be prioritized. I don't say ineligible, but we wouldn't be prioritized. We would lose every grant application we made. So I have 1 year to get this updated, and it will take every moment of that. So I'm here asking the board for $25,000 to hire a contractor to assist in that effort. Any questions?
No?
No.
Sounds like a good idea to me. We definitely want some of the Infrastructure Act. Yeah, go ahead.
So if you were to give us a map of an overlay of the areas where you will be working, not with this, yes, totally approve this has to be done. How comprehensive is it on our community, on our watershed? Is it actually going into neighborhoods? Is it in the WUI or is it out in the hinterlands? Where is this going to be?
Good question. It will be much more detailed than our last one, so it'll be better than that. There's all sorts of new requirements. Whenever there's new grant money, the agencies involved increase the requirements. It's their opportunity to get what they want. So it's a lot more detailed. It doesn't go into home HOAs and things like that. Those would be done separately by the HOA, and generally the fire department would assist them, and the Colorado State Forest Service. Often people hire consultants to get that done if they want their own specific plan, which there's huge value in it.
Sure, got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm good.
Perfect.
Got your nods.
Thanks, Valerie.
Thank you.
I just
Thank you.
don't want the people sitting behind to think we're gonna be that easy on everybody.
Yeah, if it's not wildfire, we're gonna grill you.
Yeah.
Okay,
wildfire.
next
We're
we
gonna
have a request for the
Pun intended.
courthouse for heating and cooling equipment upgrades.
Hi, thank you. I hope mine is that easy. I have 3 actually in a row here. I'm Jody Smith. I'm the Assets Director and Housing Program. And with me today is, I'm going to have several people in and out, but Jay, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Jay Clark, Facility Operations Manager.
So Facilities and Assets has been working together. As you know, we just finished the courthouse renovation in the last couple of months. And what we found during that commissioning of the HVAC systems during the final stages of that is that the original scope, where we did construction is where we changed VAVs and variable air volume devices is what that VAV stands for, to get the air flowing through the building. When we did that upgrade, we only did the areas of construction. So anywhere that there wasn't any construction on the HVAC system was left with the original or the older systems. And what we're finding out is that they're incompatible. And the courts, the court clerk and some of the other offices are just, they're either freezing or they're steaming hot, mostly steaming hot. So this is a request for $96,000 to upgrade our, just the older devices to make them compatible. And that includes 21 VAVs, 6 controllers, programming, verification, and then sequencing, and then updating our graphics. As you can see, the Train quote is $74,000, and then we need some permits, and SGM then would come back in and commission that in the end to make sure that everything is working properly.
What is Train?
Train is our
HVAC company.
HVAC company, Train.
That's the company.
The
Yeah.
equipment manufacturer, right?
Yeah, so you know, right now, Jay's staff have to get in there and try to manipulate and make things work, and it's time consuming, it's not productive, and it's not running the building as efficient as we want it to be. So that is our request for.
So what are we actually talking about here? New ducting and thermostats, or new, what is it actually?
Everything would be integrated into our virtual control system, which enables us to remotely control the temperatures and in the courthouse or in all of our buildings. What we're trying to do now, what's basically happening now is they're fighting each other. The floorboard heaters are fighting with the VAV systems, so you can have 60-degree air coming out of the vents and 80-degree, 90-degree air coming from the floorboard heaters. So we're looking to resolve that. We're looking so that we can just say we want it 74 degrees and 74
So you're
degrees.
really talking about upgrading the computerized thermostat kind of controls, not the infrastructure, not ducting and
That's correct. There would also be actuators and different controls that would be involved as well, but they will all tie into the integration of the BAS system.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, and all the infrastructure was done in the construction. It's just really the controls that are not allowing us to talk to it, to turn it on or open or close it.
Okay.
Let Greg go.
Go ahead, Greg.
Question just regarding the longevity of these systems and the need to upgrade. Clearly, they've created an obsolescence, and all of a sudden we're incompatible, and we have to spend the money. How long is this going to go? Is it an annual upgrade subscription plan with Train or with? I'm just wondering, is it time to have SGM, perhaps, if they're the right ones, look at this to make sure we're not signing up for something that's going to become extremely expensive going forward? Because it seems like everything's on a subscription plan now, and if you change one thing, all of a sudden you have to change everything. You know, we've seen it before, right? And is there any way we can avoid getting sucked into that perpetual upgrade path with this technology?
I think that you're going to have to upgrade eventually whenever the technology upgrades, and when you come to end of life and you have to do replacements. Other than that, once the system is in place, it should operate as it's designed to until we start to have to replace things at end of life again, which is generally a decade, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more.
Okay. You haven't seen those lifespans getting decreased dramatically, have you? Just wondering.
No, not with the equipment itself.
Okay.
Technology is advancing faster though, and
Right.
so when you try to integrate old and new, you're going to run into these problems.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I can understand the need to do this. I'm just concerned about the fact this courthouse renovation seems to keep nickel and diming us. And I hope this is the end, because we've been back multiple times for issues. And, you know, what started out as this much of a budget went to this much. Now we're adding another 100,000 to it. And there's got to come a point in time where we're done. Because it's, you know, you think about 95,000, you think no big deal, but add it to all the other budget, you know, allocations we've provided. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
It's like
There is
renovating
no
an
end
old
to
house.
maintaining buildings. What are you talking about?
Yeah. It's a historic
Well, we were
building.
just talking about the renovation, and this came up because of the renovation, and yeah, because the building is beautiful, so and I think we need to do this, but I'm hoping that you come back to us. Actually, you are coming back to other issues, but I'm hoping we're done. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed on that one.
Okay. And I would just acknowledge, you know, I think that during the phase one of the courthouse, this board did approve $400,000 to put those baseboards in, and it has made a tremendous difference, although we just can't make
Yeah.
them compatible with. So they're actually working too good probably right now.
We could just have a dress code, bikini bottoms and boxer shorts on the bottom and sweaters on the top.
I
That's
can't
like what I'm
address
wearing
that
now.
one.
I completely understand, because I just put a whole new boiler system in my radiant floor heat house, but they couldn't balance the thermostats. So the guy who was working on it, honestly, he came to my house one day, opened the door and said, "I'm home, I'm going down to my room now." He was there so much, so the whole balancing thing is tricky.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Try to go faster.
Do you have to feed him too when he's there?
He wouldn't take anything. Okay.
Okay, next is a request for jail safety renovation, Phase 2.
All this open space and trails left all their
It's Kinsley.
I put in a request for something.
All right, so if you recall in last year in 2022, we did a jail safety renovation project to upgrade and make certain parts of the jail safer for the detention officers and for processing. And during that time, our inmates were relocated to Garfield County. You all know the story. That changed for us, and so we are asking for $550,000 today for the jail safety renovation project, and we're calling it Phase 2. Phase 1 really did focus on the booking desk and the processing of detainees. Oh, and sorry, I'm Jody Smith, and I have the Sheriff's Office here if you guys would like to introduce yourselves.
Michael Boldioni.
Alex Burchetta.
Thank you.
Hi. Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, so it focused on just processing inmates and then moving them out. Recently, we were given a project to move forward now that Eagle County is holding part of our detainees, and we wanted to honor our new sheriff, Buglioni's vision to bring them back and be able to house and accommodate our detainees and our arrestees. So this is for the renovation of, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of information. So we have 7 cells that will then hold a total of 13 people in the jail, which right now we actually have 4 people or 5 people in there right now. And so the 7 cells will be upgraded, 2 day rooms will be done, flooring, plumbing. I will tell you that the doors, there's 6 doors, there are 6 wooden doors that have to come out, and we have to replace them with metal doors with the food through trays, and then we have 3 metal doors that we need to modify. And just the doors and the plumbing includes removing the porcelain sink and toilets and creating a combo stainless steel. Both of those are $200,000 of this. So it's the toilets or the plumbing and the doors are really a significant piece of this. we're replacing lights, everything that we can do to create a safer environment for the detainees, anti-ligature, those kinds of things. FCI they did phase 1, so we were able to kind of skip the architectural need, although we have somebody oversight to make sure we're doing exactly the same thing we did in work release, and throughout the other with all the same hardware as far as anti-ligature and those kinds of things. FCI is actually giving us, their overhead is only 3% of this contract, which is very good. They know that there's some urgency, and they're really taking care of us on that. So that is our project. We did have $200,000 in savings from phase 1 that we are using for this, and then the $350 to balance that out for the $550. So we did have some savings in the last one.
So I just can't not say this. I hope this is the last temporary thing we have to do, and that we start moving forward with the justice, just the whole process that we still have not heard from. And so, I really want this to move forward so that we are making permanent solutions rather than temporary ones. And so whatever it takes, whoever's on that committee, move it forward because it's been a long time. And I know it was set back because we have a new sheriff and some other things, but I really hope this is the last temporary one.
So that leads into my thing is, do any of these improvements carry through to what might be, this is the question of the year.
Yeah, right.
And the year's just started, and this is still the question of the year. Carry into hopefully what we're gonna be doing in the future plans. I mean, I know we don't really know what the future plans are, but I would hope that some of this can be incorporated.
Yes, fixtures, doors, the expensive items should be able to be used in the new design.
Thank you.
And again, those are high dollar items.
Okay, thank you. Because I know we need to do this, we need to show progress, and I totally agree with Francie. And we've talked about this, we need to get this moving for many reasons on many levels. So, but in the meantime, there are some things we need to do now. As long as part of it can be carried in the future, I'm okay. Thank you.
Well, and I would say that Alex and I worked a lot together to figure out and make sure that the stainless steel toilet sink, those can be moved into. I mean, we had some choices about bigger ones, and we were like, no, we want to make sure whatever we purchase now can be moved over and reused.
No, this is being recorded.
Yes, it's good for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right. And next request, we still have Jody here with us for the Senior Center office renovation.
Chad was going to join, he's the Senior Services Manager. He was going to join today. We'll see if there he is. So this is the Senior Center office renovation. This was approved in 2022 with a $270,000 budget. We went out to bid. We got one bid. It was well over 400,000, or it was just at 400,000. So during the budget process for 2023, we budgeted 400,000. We went out to bid. We got one more bid, different person, and we're still short $60,000. The bid came in just at the 400, but then we didn't have any of the funding to do the furniture package or any of the contingency or permitting that had to happen in there. So this request is for an additional $60,000 to the already approved $400,000 budget, so that we're basically doing the very same thing we did at Health and Human Services. We're ripping out all the walls. We're putting in systems, furniture, and offices so that it becomes really flexible for the future. We won't have to do drywall and all of that stuff.
We did in Basalt.
Yeah, same plan.
This is an easy one for me.
Yeah, Yeah, it's an easy one for me too, but can I just sidetrack really quickly? Chad, I hear there's a congratulations in order. I did get a call, I got a text message from the Senate floor the other day asking me what my position on your being nominated. And I sent on my thing, and the Senate shortly thereafter took a vote, and I believe it was in support.
Yeah, I believe so, yes, thank you for that.
I just wanted to let you know. Good job.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jody.
Thanks, Jody.
I hope there's money left for you guys.
No, I think we're done. Everybody can leave the room now.
Okay, next we have the Healthy Rivers. We've got our two
The
Lisas
Weaver
here.
Ditch is back. There's extra chairs, an extra chair there.
All right.
And here's another one here. My sister's husband just took a fall.
Yours?
My sister's husband, yeah, he's almost 80.
Ready? Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lisa McDonald with the Healthy Rivers Program. I'm joined by Lisa Tasker with the program. Today, we have Quinn Donnelly. You know Quinn from several of our river projects. He is the engineer for the Crystal Restoration Project at Riverfront Park in Carbondale. Mark O'Mara is also joining us with the town of Carbondale. He is leading the project for the town. So in front of you today is a request for funding to the county, or the Healthy Rivers Board has been asked to join the project as a partner and collaborative work on this project, not just a grant request. So the River Board has had numerous meetings with Quinn and the town on different variations of the project, different funding requests, and finally settled upon a $425,000 ask for to join and be a part of this project. I think that ask may be a little bit different now. The funding that the town has received has changed a little bit since the information went into your packet that's attached. And so I wanted Quinn to join us today and give a little bit more detail about the actual project. So I will let Quinn take it from here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah, so this is about a half-mile stretch just downstream of the hatchery on the Crystal River. It was identified as a degraded reach in the 2016 Crystal River Management Plan for a number of things, but including habitat, stream temperature. The proposed project is kind of a multi-purpose that addresses concerns in the channel with an emphasis on the aquatic habitat and then connectivity during low flows. As you know, the Crystal can get incredibly low late in the summer. It was in 2018, I think 5 CFS past the hatchery. And then also in the Banklin upland areas, there's a town-owned park adjacent to the river. And the emphasis there is going to be on removing invasive species. They're putting in an outdoor classroom and trails, and probably one of the coolest things, it's going to be one of the only accessible, actually the only accessible access point to the water's edge of the Crystal River, in Carbondale and upstream. So that's been a big emphasis with the town. And also we think it could be a good pilot project for a number of other diversions on the Crystal River, many of which are in Pitkin County. Mark and the town have been working on the project for almost 6 years now. They've gone through several iterations, and through a public engagement process, they settled on the current design. The last couple of years we've been fundraising. As you know, the bar has been changing as far as what construction costs have been, particularly in the civil dirt moving world. So not including the Pitkin County partnership, the town's acquired 13 grants from 7 different sources and over 1.9 million, which was well above our estimate, kind of pre-COVID, and then of course things changed. The town actually went out to bid in spring of 2022, and like Jody was saying, we got one bid that was twice what we had estimated, and so went back to the drawing board. The town of Carbondale put in another big chunk of money and just through the fall, as we were applying for grants, we reached out to Lisa McDonald and Lisa Tasker to see if they were interested in kind of have a partnership to help get the project across the finish line. We know there's a big focus with the Healthy Rivers Board on the Crystal River, after presenting things and having conversations, they in January were supportive of the project. And so we actually went back out to bid this winter to try to capture the contractors before they got too busy. And we were able to get a qualified bid within our budget, including the Pickens County partnership funding. And so we're excited that, right now everything's pointing to getting this project built this summer. Might be a little bit later than normal this year, but I think that's a good thing. So yeah, that's pretty much a summary of the project. Mark, did you want to add anything?
No.
I have a question. Is
Yeah, we all
Garfield,
raised our hand.
is Garfield County involved with this?
They are not on a financial level.
It just seems a little strange that Pickens being asked for 20% of the cost and Garfield is not involved.
It's not uncommon, but it is strange.
It's an unfortunate situation.
It needs to come to an end.
Is this the only access, you said the only access to the river from the town?
Public access.
Without like an accessible ramp, basically. I mean, there's
boat ramp.
plenty. Well, no, like somebody in a wheelchair or
Oh, got it, okay.
that less able-bodied folks be able to get to the river would be the only spot.
All right.
But yeah, there are other access spots, Staircase Park and others.
So we are planning hopefully a site visit between now and second read? No.
Well, we talked about doing something soon, if,
Like the
depending
20th,
on
I
the
think we were
board's.
looking at. But I know the Eagles are in the way.
Right,
We've
yeah,
got to
so
wait
we
until
don't wanna bother them.
the 15th is when the Eagle closure ceases, so it'll be after the 15th.
Of March.
Yeah.
So, and
Hopefully
just,
by then, we'll be able to get down there without,
yeah, I'm really
snowshoes.
supportive. My kids lived a little further downriver, so I spent a lot of time on the river there at the Dohertys. But it's a really neat, cool stretch there with things coming and going, but an enhancement of this area I think is a great idea. Lisa knows how I feel about the Eagles and the Osprey, so I wouldn't mind if the Eagles moved out and the Osprey got to come back.
So I have,
We'll put some,
I do have a
signs up.
question about the permitting for this. So I was just reading about a bill that's is proposed to be before the state legislature about stream restoration. And it's
Outside of
that-
Army Corps permit?
It's
Lisa knows about that one, yeah.
yeah, it's under under Polis's direction, it's proposed by the DNR, and it's drafted to solve the problem of restoration, and that it can only take place in the historic footprint of the stream riparian corridor without being subject to the water administration, the whole water thing. So this isn't gonna have it be affected by the water administration?
No, there's no, water rights associated. This project was permitted through the Army Corps with CPW's consulting, and then, yeah, correct. And then the floodplain permit is through the town of Carbondale.
And yeah, Francie, so that legislation is sort of trying to make it so projects like this are definitely outside of the scope of water law issues, because they really are. They're just trying to
Clean it up.
They're trying to clear it up. And
Yeah.
They might be creating more of a conundrum, we'll see, but there's a lot of discussion going on this week about that. But this would be outside
Of
this would
that.
actually be sort of the perfect model project of what should be outside of the administration of any kind of water rights issues.
Some folks on maybe the extreme are like, oh, you're putting a tree in, that tree is gonna pull water out of the river, that's a conceptive use. And the argument is that if we're within that historic riparian corridor, there were always trees there taking that water out. As
Heck
long as
yeah.
we're within that footprint, then we're
Yeah.
okay.
I look forward to a site visit. I'm hoping we can do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you
Would
want to
it-
do something sooner, or?
I don't think we can.
Okay.
Is it
So maybe
asking
this
too
spring?
much to have you tell me a little bit about what invasive species you're talking about removing?
Vegetation.
Yeah,
And
like what?
Lisa may be able to talk to it more than I can, but
There's things like absinthe wormwood and thistles. I don't know if you know what absinthe wormwood is.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah. Okay. Anyway, I was the first person to actually bring that to the attention of this entire state, which was kind of
Oh,
an
cool.
interesting, strange thing to claim, but.
Now you're gonna be pulling it out.
the
Yeah.
park's kind of interesting. I think historically it was grazed, and so there's just a lot of disturbance from
Thistle
that,
and
and the
stuff,
weeds have taken over. And they put a lot of effort in.
There was a
And-
lot of activity along that section.
Yeah, exactly.
Riparian areas are magnets for weeds because there's extra water, right?
Yeah, they grow.
Are we naming this noxious weed after you then?
No, it's already got a name, I'm good.
So I guess I just have to ask, are we the last resort for filling in this last bit of money that's needed?
Yeah, so the plan is that you know, getting the project built, Picken County will get their, you know, money back first, is the plan. But you guys
Say that
are,
again?
so you guys are the last resort. You know, we really tried to, like I said, we have 13 different grants we've applied for the
And I
last 2
think
years.
that's pretty awesome.
You know, and
Amazing.
almost $2 million, and so we've become good friends with the CWCB and the River District, and fishing is fun and all those things. So yeah, you guys were kind of we really need to get this built before things get even more expensive. Started having these conversations, and we have, you know, committed that if we don't end up using the full amount that Picken County's contributing as part of the partnership, you guys would get your money back first, or portion of it.
We're the first list of people who get our money back?
Yes.
When they actually, just checking.
I think this is also a perfect support area for kind of a wild and scenic issue.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the timing is good, because I know Lisa McDonald, Lisa Tasker went to the Board of Trustees and get their thoughts on the wild and scenic stuff. So it does seem like a good partnership developing in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah, we appreciated your input for
Nancy, yeah.
Carbondale on that, Mark. Thank you
I
for
really
that.
look forward to seeing it before, during, and after.
Yeah, you're welcome to come out, you know, obviously before, and then, yeah, if you ever want a tour during construction.
Don't worry, Lisa knows we like those kind of things. Lisa knows.
Well, I'm going to give a reluctant nod to this. I would like Carbondale to step up more, and obviously I would like Garfield County to get involved.
I'm
Really
giving a
involved,
definite
because
nod.
they're
One
not.
thing that's happening with the Healthy Rivers program, and the board has a slideshow, and they're going to do a roadshow, and they have decided that they would really like to try and interact with Garfield County and talk about the Healthy Rivers program personally. So board members are actually going to reach out.
Brave
Sounds good.
souls.
Great.
Brave souls.
Sounds good.
Right. And the county, I mean, staff and everything is going to be heavily involved with, you know, the project and stuff. So we went to the pre-bid, we're talking with the contractors, everything like that. So we're staying, you know, on top of it, just like a
I'm sure you
project that
are.
we were.
Lisa said she didn't have enough meetings on her calendar,
Yeah.
so we're just trying to add more.
Well, the Crystal River is very dear to my heart, as you probably know. So, you know, at first I was hesitant about this project anyway, because just like I was with the bike trail, you know, I just sort of like the river area to be left alone. But I have been convinced that this is an improvement, so hoping it turns out to be that way. And I mean, I think, Mark, I trust your judgment, so I think if you're behind it, I feel pretty good about that. And
We've approached this with as light a touch as possible, trying to keep it not bare bones, because there's gonna be some massive changes
Yeah.
within the channel, but I think that the overall aspect is to try and bring back some of the historical perspective of the riparian area and also improve the channel.
And so there is some channelizing, right, to increase the depth and affect the water temperature and fish
Yeah.
habitat.
And we think that a lot of the issues it's having now is because of excessive sediment input into the river from maintenance at the Weaver Diversion and all the bank erosion that's occurring there. And so we are putting a thaw egg back in. Obviously, that's going to change over time depending on what the runoff and sediment transport's doing. But we're removing a lot of those local sources. I think will help transport that stuff through the reach more than it is now.
Great, okay, yeah,
Well,
great.
Just this morning, we had a presentation from what are they called? The Recreation Coalition?
The Roaring Fork
Roaring Fork
Outdoor Coalition.
Outdoor Coalition. And I don't think Carbondale's even a part of that yet, and
Not
maybe they'll
yet.
be invited at
It's
some
not.
point, but
We're trying to
it's
expand
all
that
about trying
boundary.
to coordinate on whether it's development or protection of recreation and, you know, vital resource areas like that. And so I'm hoping this is incentive to help, and maybe the Healthy Rivers can give a little nudge there that, you know, maybe this is a good opportunity for Carbondale to engage with that organization as it's building this coalition across the watershed, and it involves the federal agencies and Pitkin County and Eagle County, and some of the municipalities, I believe. So, but Carbondale's not on the list yet. hopefully soon, and then we'll just keep chipping away at Garfield, or at least the eastern portion of Garfield County.
I think they've got a wake-up call coming.
Well, their constituency will be demanding it sometime, I think. But thank you, this is great. I support it, and
Thanks for
looking
coming
forward to
in.
it.
So,
Appreciate it. Nice to
Thank
see
you.
you.
direction on the site visit, do you want to do something when we
Charlotte's
can
already-
get down there?
Charlotte's already reached out to see what day works for us.
Right, but that, I think we were talking about in between first and second read, so it doesn't sound like that maybe would work.
Second reading's the
What-
22nd.
Yeah,
And, yeah,
Let's do
we've got,
weeks.
we've got
we'd have to do it next week.
stuff.
Yeah. So maybe earlier spring, would that work? Or we'll just work on
We're looking for a
some
site
dates?
visit on the 20th.
Oh, you are? Okay, good.
the date.
Well, I'll talk to Charlotte.
Yeah.
Cool. All
That's
right.
where we're working. 20th of this month.
Good. All right.
March-
Well, we'll see you guys soon.
Charlotte sent us a
Yeah.
request for availability.
March 20.
Yeah, March 20th. Is that what she had? Thanks for coming.
Good, thank
Nice to see you
you.
again.
Thank you all.
Thank you for your support.
Well, thank you for
Thank
all your
you.
work.
Thanks for everything you've been doing down there for so long.
It's been,
It's a beautiful, it's a
good
really-
things take time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you've been putting the time in, so.
I've been trying to get a hydro project in since 2009. It looks like I'm gonna finally get it in this year.
All right, well
We'll
done.
get you through this one, you can work on the other one, how's that?
It's always something.
Yeah, nice
Thank
to
you.
Let's
see
do,
you.
put pump back in, I'll be really excited. Put in pump storage.
That's,
Oh,
thought you
really?
said
that's
hump
another
back,
step
and now
like
we're
that.
bringing it way up.
One at a
well,
time.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming up, Mark.
Okay, next we have a request for the 2023 paving projects for road maintenance.
Hey, a familiar face.
Hi everyone, Andrew Knapp, the new county engineer. You might remember me
The
from
new
my
county engineer.
past life.
I remember
here.
hanging out at some fun meetings with you when you were with the state.
I'm glad you remember him that way.
That was a tough meeting.
She's a glutton.
That was a brutal meeting.
So I'm here for a supplemental request for the 2023 countywide paving project. As part of this project, we're looking to treat Owl and Woody Creek roads. These projects were originally scoped to be a pretty simple overlay, and that's what those original budget numbers reflected. However, as we got into the design, it was clear that some more extensive work was warranted on these roads to preserve the investment in the asphalt. The culverts are slated to be replaced. There's some full depth patches, some ditch work, drainage work to help facilitate the drainage through these corridors and keep the pavement in good condition. Additionally, it's a broken record. Construction inflation is exorbitant right now. There's a lot of upward price pressures going on right now with material costs, fuel costs, and a severely constrained labor market. We did have this out to bid, and we recently received some bids back that have informed these numbers. And we did receive 2 bids to help kind of truth some of the numbers we've received. So the numbers you're seeing here in this request would allow us to move forward with addressing both Owl Creek and Woody Creek this year. If we're not able to get the additional funding into the program, then we'll have to defer Woody Creek to a future year and expect the cost to continue to escalate if that's the case.
How does this affect our budget, Connie?
The good news is that, and there is good news here, budget-wise, we were projecting that we would have more sales tax than budget in 2022, and that was the case. But in the Road and Bridge Fund, it's even $100,000 more than what our projection was. So about an extra $100,000 in sales tax revenue. There were also about $1.5 million in savings from previous year's road projects that we have in the fund. We have not finalized all of the rest of the fund line items, but it does look like there are a number of other savings, even in addition to what's mentioned in this supplemental request. So the fund is in good condition with sufficient fund balance from savings in 2022, the revenue coming in pretty strong, so I think the fund can absorb this pretty easily.
And it'll stay within the Road and Bridge Fund.
Yes, yes.
Patty?
Yeah,
Thank
you know, I've been driving Elk Creek a lot lately, and it's in good shape. But is that where a lot of the drainage, because I know we have that one area we have not been able to, that drainage issue keeps coming back when you come down the hill and go by Charlie Holloway's house. Yeah, you know, is that kind of where the drainage issues are gonna be, and trying to maintain the continuity of the asphalt through there?
Yeah, the drainage issues are pretty well throughout the corridor. Some of the most major areas of drainage concern is just above the Lotta curve, where there's.
Yes, that's the section.
Yeah, I'm not quite familiar with all
With
the.
Charlie
I don't know
Holloway
who
is.
lived there.
Yeah.
That's old school, sorry.
Trying to learn, but no, appreciate that. So yeah, we're seeking to address that. You know, if you would look at it with a roadway engineer nerd set of eyes, you might see something a little different than what you're seeing. There is a lot of distress out there right now, and the distress in the pavement is pretty well correlated to those locations of poor drainage. You know, where you have saturated subgrades and soils, they are less strong and able to hold up the roadway platform. We're gonna see it going on into spring thaw here with some of our other roads.
That's what I was gonna ask. This seems like a big pothole year.
Yes.
Already
it's
started.
Potholes, sinkholes, yeah, there's gonna be lots of issues that are gonna open up this spring, you know, because we've had a lot of moisture.
We already do have a major river running down Prince Creek Road, right on the edge of the road.
Yes, and I don't know if you've heard, Elk Creek Road has had some issues as well that are very challenging to address in winter conditions. You know, being able to reestablish ditch lines when you have giant mounds of snow and limited right-of-way and almost non-existent culvert drainage network through there. There's very few things you can do this time of year to address that. So, you know, doing a project like this, you know, will prevent these major issues from cropping up in the future, and it will preserve the investment in the asphalt surface. We could go out and do a simple overlay without addressing those other issues. It'd be cheaper, but not over the long term.
Yeah.
You'd be back sooner.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I was kind of thinking the same thing about the Woody Creek Road. I've been driving that quite a bit lately, and I thought, it wasn't, when I drive it, I don't think, oh, this needs help, you know? Not
Yeah.
like,
That's what you don't see that gets you.
I guess.
Yeah, and there's a significant elk crossing on that section of Owl Creek Road, so just to let you know. They come out of nowhere, and there's a little gate, and they run across there, and it's a significant group of elk, so
Okay.
just keep your eyes open.
I'll be looking.
So be careful with them.
Just wanted, Andrew, you've been associated long enough that you probably know what the prognosis is for the roads, but would this be an opportunity to share with the community a little bit about what the anticipation is about road damage this year through the spring freeze-thaw cycle? Because I think people should be prepared. We're already seeing it on Main Street. We're seeing it throughout Aspen. We're seeing it on the CDOT roads, which aren't us, but I know we sometimes cooperate and help them out. Is there anything you can share to assure the public that we're aware of the situation regarding this has been an amazing year for potholes, as it has been a year for big snow.
Yeah, it has been an amazing year for potholes, and it's a regional issue, right? It's not just Aspen or Pitkin County. It's
Try driving Glenwood Springs.
most of North America, right? That is going through a lot of this right now.
Yeah.
And with these potholes are driven by freeze-thaw cycles, and we've had a lot of those and a lot of moisture to get incorporated into that. And when you're not keeping up on your more expensive overlay treatments, and you're just kind of trying to keep things going with pothole patching and whatnot, you have a lot more areas for water intrusion into your roadway prism that just keeps accelerating that damage. Mm-hmm. So by trying to kind of catch up and stay up on these investments, it will reduce the number of those potholes in the future, and it should save the county money over the long term by doing this investment early.
It's probably the most important thing we do.
I guess I'm
Glad
just
you're here.
surprised at how big a supplement this is compared to what you thought your budget was going to be. Is there any reason for that?
Cost of asphalt,
Is it just the cost of materials? I mean,
No.
labor,
So,
extension.
trying to phrase this delicately here. I came in November, so I haven't been here for the full cycle of project development here. But my understanding is that, as this was developed, it was just anticipated to be that simple overlay. And then when you get into the design, you go out on your site visits, you're talking with our road and bridge staff, adjacent landowners, identifying the issues, and your scope can begin to increase, and with increased scope is increased cost.
I see.
And so we have increased scope that's driving this increase in costs, in addition to these headwinds of inflation that are industry nation worldwide going on right now. So it's kind of a double whammy in that regard.
So it's kind of a change in design, a change in intent. You're doing it differently than we had thought you were going to when we did the
Yeah, a
budget.
little
Yes.
deeper.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's-
Literally a little deeper.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right.
thank you.
Thanks. Good
Thanks
job.
for the bad news.
Mr. Engineer.
You guys are really bumming me out here. Who's next?
We haven't said no yet.
I know.
Oh, go on.
Yeah, we haven't said no yet, Jordan.
How are we going to say no to fixing
Next
the
we've
roads?
got
I mean,
pilot help, because if we don't
I'd
do it
love
now,
to.
it's gonna be really.
I would have said no to
complicated.
the Carbondale thing if I
This
could.
is, you see this one road in Glenwood?
Carbondale thing is, that's ridiculous, 20% of the.
All right,
I mean, Pickens County, come on.
So we have public health back here in front of you for a request for a 2.5-year term limited full-time position. And I will let Larissa and Jordana explain this to you. There was one page in your packet that's probably difficult to read, and I do have a large scale version. If
It's a
any of the
Roman
commissioners would like
proclamation.
to take a look.
The sea scrolls.
Special printer.
No, it looks like I should be reading like the arms aren't even quite long enough to. So I have to
right.
peruse this.
And I'll let Jordana talk a little bit more about that specific document you're looking at too, if you have questions. But good afternoon, my name is Larissa Bonilla. I'm the Planning, Prevention, and Partnerships Manager with the Public Health Department. And as Connie mentioned, I'm here today to present a budget supplemental request for one FTE 2.5-year term limited health promotion coordinator position. And so this position would, one, help to fill a significant gap that was identified in that analysis that you're looking at.
No, I'm not.
I
Which,
went right to where I got. it's
that's
kind of
okay.
funny.
Which is related to our core public health services that were mandated to provide by the state of Colorado. And so three areas of core public health services that were kind of struggling to meet the capacity is maternal and child health, behavioral health promotion, and access to and linkage with healthcare.
Whoa.
Sorry.
Behavioral what?
Behavioral health promotion.
And then?
Access to and linkage with healthcare, and maternal and
I got the first one.
child
Understood that
family
one pretty well.
services.
The third one more time?
Maternal and
No, the linked.
access to healthcare.
Access
Okay.
to healthcare.
Mhm.
Okay.
And so additionally, this position would help to maintain some of the functions of the COVID-19 term limited positions that are expected to end in June this year. And also allow us to increase our capacity to fulfill those three core public health services that I mentioned. And so one thing we learned during the COVID pandemic was that a public health staff member is really critical to sharing out messages with the community, as well as to build partnerships to work towards common shared public health efforts. And so this position would help to maintain some of those community relationships, as well as transition some of the really great work that's happened from the COVID pandemic, including our COVID-19 website, our newsletter, as well as those partnerships. And so this position was submitted as pending during the 2023 budget process, provided that funding could be secured to support it. And on the budget supplemental, you'll see we were able to receive 2 state grants that would help to support this position for that 2.5-year time frame. And then if approved, we would continue to seek funding to support the position and then readdress it in the 2026 budget process.
Yeah.
You know how I feel about adding new positions, but that being said, when we first put together the Board of Health, one of the big things that came forward was all these things we had to do mandated by the state. And at that point, it was, we're gonna hire somebody to do everything. One person to this, one person. So I really appreciate this combination of, we need to fulfill these things, and we're gonna have one person who's gonna work on it for the next 2 years on a term limited. Let's see how it goes in after that's up. So I really appreciate that effort, because it addresses my concerns, and it makes much better sense than hiring one person to do one individual task. And there's a lot of continuity with the community in that manner. And I think that's important coming out of COVID and all the issues we had within the community about Board of Health and public health. I think this is a good step.
Thank you, Patty.
So just remind me, when we were looking at the request that you made for 2023, we approved like 2 or 3 of your list. This is the one we didn't approve at that time? Is that?
There were actually 2 positions that weren't approved out of 4. One was a mental health position, which is fully funded by the mental health partners. Then there was the epidemiologist that was approved. There was also an environmental health position that was not approved in the budget process. So this one, it wasn't clear when we were doing the 2023 budget if there was enough funding available for it. And that was one of the concerns that was voiced. The grant money that's being brought in will cover it fully for this 2.5-year period.
And that's
Your
what we
memory
asked.
is staggering. Wow.
She's got a lot more in there if you want to.
I know.
Yeah.
Holy mackerel. Okay, well, that really helps a lot. Thank you for that
Okay.
explanation. As usual, Connie, you've been helpful.
As always.
Okay, well, since it's funded, let's go for it.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
We asked and you delivered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we're delivering back.
Another FTE.
Not sure.
Forgot this was up.
It's big enough. Okay, we have the Solid Waste Center here, and this is another position request. And Tyler and Kathy, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Kathy Hall, the Solid Waste Director.
I'm Tyler Carvel, Assistant Solid Waste Director. Kind of just wanted to paint the picture for this one. It's not necessarily as simple as some of the supplementals we've had in the past. In 2021, we had a supplemental approved that increased the operations staff to 10 people. And in 2022, that operator got injured. He's been on workers' comp for quite a while, still is, and we transitioned him into the scale house. He wanted that for his own career growth as well. He's happy there, but it did leave us short one person, but it took the FTE with it. And so that's kind of the operations side. On the actual scale house side, in 2022, we restructured that position from gatekeeper to scale house technician, which added a lot of responsibilities to what they were doing to begin with. And that placed some strain on the scale house to have them accept all these additional responsibilities and still be there to run the scale, as well as the addition of the mercantile, which pulls from the same employee pool. So the combination of all those 3 things kind of combined to make a good place for that employee. He wanted to go there, and it's been a good fit for the additional workload in the scale house. So the request is for an additional operator because it is the position that we're missing, but that's the kind of the picture as a whole. Yeah. And we do have some numbers in there just from the last couple of years. Scalehouse has gone up 10% in transactions. And actually, I know Kathy pulled the numbers this morning, and just this year alone, January and February compared to last year, we're up 5% and $200,000 in revenue. So we are seeing another increased year. So the help in the scale house will be very much appreciated, as well as the operations crew going forward.
So you're going to be able to pay for this new employee pretty easily, it looks like. Okay?
I would say that.
The revenue in the landfill is more than sufficient to cover the costs, so
Great.
there's no issues there. And this request was actually presented by the Solid Waste Center for submission in the 2023 budget. We did not bring it forward just because there was confusion over what's being requested. The picture wasn't painted quite fully enough to show both sides, both the scale house side and the landfill operations side.
No problem with me.
Yeah, well, I have a concern because it's creating a new FTE. And I don't care, I mean, in this case, I know it's funded through the enterprise fund, but, you know, because it seems like we just keep kind of piecemealing our FTEs, because to circumvent me in many cases, I'm sure. And I understand the need, and I know I'm very well aware of the scale house getting busier, and also the mercantile, which is a favorite in the community. So I understand that. And I'm glad that there's revenue because of the increased activity at the scale. People coming and going, and fees are generated. But it just is a hard one for me to have a full-time FTE come in, because you shifted one over, and we weren't part of that permission to shift. And now you're asking us to replace something that you've already shifted. So I think it'll probably move forward, but I just want you to know I'm a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I understand Patty's point. I think with the increased importance of what the activities out there, it makes sense to me that this is necessary. I have no problem with that. But still, we're watching the staff grow everywhere. And that's something I think we're supposed to be looking out for. So thank you for bringing it up, but I do support it.
Yeah. Good luck finding another heavy equipment operator.
Right. Yeah, good luck with that.
So I think we'll move it forward. And I do want to talk to you about some ideas about the city's composting program. I've got some Boy Scouts who are interested in helping us educate the community.
Well, excellent.
Let's get them out there. They can run equipment.
Well, but not now, because we're 25 minutes
No, I know.
behind.
I'm just bringing it up. Steve would be telling you a story about something. It's my turn. I'm sitting in Steve's seat.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the good
Thanks.
work you guys do out there.
Thank you.
I'm still coming for that gravel.
Okay. Okay, one more request. This is the last one, and
This
it's
is
for
a
the
tough one,
library.
too.
Last one.
Hi, congratulations.
Oh, thanks. Kathy's conveniently sick today, so for our last supplemental request for her. So I'm here just to ask for a $25,000 increase to our professional services budget to pay for our owner's rep for the Snowmass Village Station project.
Let me see.
Who is your owner's rep?
David Detweiler, the board,
he's great.
library board approved his contract at our last meeting at the beginning of March.
He helped us with this building here. He's great.
Yeah, he is great, and he helped us with our addition that we put on
Yes,
the original
yes.
library building, and you know he
Great
knows
resource.
his way around Picken County.
Great resource. And I was just talking to someone from Snowmass who said, "Are we getting a library?" I said, "We're working on it." And they're
Working on
very
it.
excited in
Yeah.
Snowmass. Very excited.
So this is just for the phase 1 pre-design and design development stuff, and we're prepared for what comes next, hopefully.
This is her first presentation to
Hi.
us, right? We shouldn't be
Yes.
making this so easy for you.
I know. What should I do?
Well, I
Tap
haven't
dance?
said anything yet.
How many books
I haven't
you gonna
grilled
have?
you yet, as I promised I would. I've done some grilling, though, today.
I know. I've been happy to witness it.
Explain to me a little bit about the budget for the Snowmass Village library. I'm not really up to speed on that, like Picken County's involvement, Snowmass Village involvement, that sort of whole thing.
Right. So with Connie's help as the budget master here, we have a separate library fund, separate from the Picken County General Fund. It's property tax line item, if you can.
Yeah, so 50,000 was included in the 2023 budget as just beginning work on feasibility study. So this is, as Genevieve said, this is just the first initial work to be done on the project. And I'm sure there will be more coming as they move forward and begin to gain information through these initial steps in the project.
So it's a Pitkin County Library located in Snowmass Village.
A substation, if you will.
Yeah, we're calling it a library station because we will be joined with the rec center, we hope, depending on how these go. We just went to RFP today for an architect for our preliminary designs. And yeah.
So is Snowmass Village's involvement part of the fact they're going to hopefully allow us to use that space at the rec center?
Yeah, they'll be providing the land, and it's sort of modeled off of the Fruta library model, where it's a rec center and a library combined.
So we're allocating $75,000 just to think about it, basically.
Well, it's a feasibility and design study. Yeah. I mean, we have to get all of our ducks in a row, make sure that we can move forward. I know it's a.
Well,
I get
Francine,
it.
We have so many studies.
There's long been a literary deficit out in Snowmass, and the entire county is aware of this. We're trying to solve a problem here.
But with the traffic coming in and out of Aspen, just to use the library would just, we want to provide that for those residents.
It's a climate action. This is a climate action
using the
plan.
library? People come to Aspen just to use the library?
Oh, God,
I'm
yes.
sure.
That's great.
They come from all over.
We want to provide them with
They
that
come from all
service
over the
in
world,
Snowmass.
actually, to use our library.
Oh, God.
We've been embarrassed by this for so long. I'm glad you're addressing this head on.
Well, I think pretty soon we're going to have
Greg,
to have a school up there.
touche.
I think we're going to have a
You should be
substation
sitting
for
in
the
Steve's
Aspen
seat.
School District in Snowmass Village to account for this problem.
All in jest. I think it's great.
Thank
Okay.
you, Greg.
And
Thanks,
it's Steve's
Francie.
district, too, and he's not even here to defend him.
Any questions should be directed to Steve Child.
Okay, and Kelly
Do I
also.
have his
Yeah.
nameplate in front of me?
Yeah, it's just it's a 50% increase over what we budgeted. It's like,
It was an oversight. We budgeted for the architect and not for the owner's rep. So, yeah.
But she can blame that on somebody else because
Yeah.
she's new.
but why do we need an owner's rep at the design stage? I understand what an owner's rep does and everything,
Right.
but why do we need them to oversight with the architect?
Can we
Well,
invite Rich in to
yeah,
comment
well,
on that? He's an owner's rep.
Perhaps that somebody employed by Pitkin County could do it, but I think everyone is pretty busy at the moment.
Yeah.
Hi, Board. Rich Engelhardt, Deputy County Manager. Yes.
Hi, Rich.
Not only have hired owners reps, but John Peacock has put me in as an owner's rep. So, and it's early in this stage. I think David's knowledge up there, he's been working with Snowmass for quite some time. To get him in early on this process of
Who's
starting
David?
David
That's the owner's
Detweiler,
rep?
the owner's rep
Okay.
that you're hopefully getting ready to approve here for this. But I think getting Dave on early helps us to advance the project to where we need to get it, to be able to starting putting numbers to it, seeing what it's going to look like. He works a lot on layout and the massing and what happens up there with how it's going to fit into this. I believe it's part of a recreation center. It's a little complicated. This one's going to be interesting. And I see John Peacock's on because it's going to be an arrangement also between the county and Snowmass.
Yeah, that's what I was
And how
asking
we do this. But I think to answer Greg's question, in a case like this, I think getting him on early in this process is going to probably save us money down the road.
It's because
And it helps
Tom
with the
lives in
resources
Snowmass
as
and
well.
He needs that educational.
Yeah.
We're going to have to enter into an agreement with Snowmass Village that not only defines the use of the property, but also any shared liabilities and maintenance, because whatever is constructed out there, because this would be new construction onto the rec center, and so. As owner's rep, those are the types of issues that Dave, in working with the architect, we'll be able to identify and also work with the architect to help minimize for both parties. So us reaching an agreement that I think is a really good model, that Fruta model of rec center and library. They also have senior center, by the way, in there is really, really successful model. But we're going to have some challenges working through an intergovernmental agreement to make sure our contributions and long-term obligations are fair for both parties. That's really where Dave will be able to help us out.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Rich.
Good. As usual, John, you convinced me.
It's hard being the last one.
When you meet him, you will
It was
like.
much too easy.
Someone has to be said no
My
to.
son is in the room.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Connie.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
those are the
All right,
requests.
so,
We'll,
we take
we'll be
a
back
wee
tomorrow
break?
for first reading.
Connie,
on
thank you
budget
so much.
resolution.
Connie, thank you. You had a good crew in here today.
You guys want to take a break? Or
I
should
would
we
love
plow
to take
on?
a little
She
break.
does, yeah. And I'll
You
I'll
need to take a break?
Just a short one.
5 minute?
All right, 5
do
minutes.
5.
Dora. Welcome back to the Board of County Commissioners Tuesday, March 7th work session. And we are going to be moving into review of public agendas, calendars right now. And I'm wondering if, John, you have anything for us?
With his mouth full.
Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Sorry, you caught me while I was just finishing a snack there.
No worries.
So, yeah, we have a few things on future agendas for you. We have 2 short-term rental items. The first is we would like to start looking for a day in May to do a work session up in Redstone as part of our short-term rental outreach. Generally, it's worked better for us if my cat is being very insistent on being on the TV right now. I'm sorry, she's stepping on my keyboard. But we generally try and do that on a day that's not our regularly scheduled Tuesday work sessions, just because we don't have the capability to necessarily televise down there, but it's really up to the board. We can either, since we are missing 2 board members today, perhaps we can get that request out there and revisit it next Tuesday.
Okay.
Either that or maybe Charlotte can send us some possible dates in May like she does, and we can tell her when we might be available. I'd like to get the ball rolling because our schedules are getting booked so crazy, right? With all kinds of nighttime events, weekend events.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to get on your radar screen. So just know that request is going to be coming from staff to get that scheduled. We also have a request to get the short-term rental revisions in the rural and remote area in front of the board.
Yes, we do.
Fairly quickly.
Yeah,
I'm
that would be
sorry,
great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
And what came back to me was a conversation about potentially posting a special meeting during a future work session or putting it on a regular meeting agenda. The real difference is posting a special meeting during a work session would potentially get your first reading a week quicker. The concern that I'd flag for the board is that I do think this will be an item of interest to the public and concern, and we typically hear those types of changes during our regular meetings on Wednesdays. So I'm not saying there wouldn't necessarily be public confusion, but there's a greater likelihood of some confusion from the public, and the board may want to think about in making that change whether you want to stick to a regular meeting or not, but just looking for direction on getting that scheduled.
A work session meeting, you're talking, a work session meeting either way. It'd either be a special meeting on a Tuesday or part of the agenda on a Tuesday. That's what you're saying.
On a regular meeting on
a regular meeting.
Wednesday. Yeah, that's when you would typically hear it. That's when the public generally expects those things, but it would add a week, and then we also have the March 22nd meeting, and maybe I'll roll these 2 things together, where the board has made a request to limit the number of items because of the housing summit.
Yeah.
That was scheduled, and we do have that limited to 4 meetings right now, but it just so happens that the second reading on short-term rentals would fall on that 22nd and either need to be pushed out a little bit longer. So that's kind of the dilemma. I just wanted to flag for the board and get some direction how you want us to schedule that.
Okay, when we were talking about it at the agenda meeting, we were talking about the possibility of having a discussion as a board before we had an
ordinance come forward.
Thank you, an ordinance come forward and discussed it in public. Isn't that what we talked about, Greg? Am I mistaken on Thursday? Didn't we say probably we should chat a little bit first? Because for one thing, I didn't want to spring it on you who hadn't heard about it. And,
I've heard about it.
yeah, so.
But
when I brought it up before,
I think
you
that's
were
a good
like-
idea.
You were like,
Well,
well, I'm not ready, or, you know,
Well,
I remember you said something, and.
Well, my concern is I'd like to know how many we've had. There's some issues, but I don't want to bring it up now because of time. But I think having it at a work session for a discussion is a great idea, so we can filter it and then bring it back at a regular meeting.
That's what I think so too,
There's no
Joe.
hurry really, because we don't have any applications
Is it
coming
a
in.
single reading or a two reading?
It's a 2-read.
It'll be a 2 reading item, and so that's different than I think what we had understood as staff, so that makes more sense. So what you're looking for is
Thank you.
next work session to just have a work session on it, not call a special meeting for adoption, and then
Right.
it would come at a
Right.
regular meeting based on board direction.
Yeah.
Okay. No,
I
that-
definitely want
that
it to
makes
be
sense.
as public as possible, and I also want all the commissioners to be sort of at least understanding what direction we're going before we have a regular meeting with it.
And it'd be nice to
Before
have
we
us-
look at the
Understood.
It'd
ordinance.
be nice to have us all there too.
Yeah. Okay?
Okay. Yeah, that makes it a lot easier.
Good. Great.
So we will get that scheduled. And then, as I noted, we have shortened the March 22nd agenda. We have, I think we are down to 3 items on it that are all second reads, so I think they will go fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're obviously going to need to talk about the housing summit and the board support or not, which will be part of open discussion. But we have tried to get that limited as much as possible. It's not clear to me yet who all is attending. that.
Yeah, okay, so what we discussed on Thursday was the possibility of our all going over in the morning, and then my coming back just for the meeting, and everybody else zooming in, whoever was available to zoom in from over there. Kelly probably won't be available, I think she's on the panel. I don't know how long of a panel she's on, it's a varied.
She'll be there
We
all day.
finally got an agenda. I know she'll be there all day, but she's only gonna be on one panel, you know, so. We just got the agenda, but, so anyway, so I was gonna come back here, open the meeting here just to make it a grassroots, Michaela, easier kind of situation. And then we have the meeting, and these guys will be already over there, and then I'll go back to the housing
No,
summit.
I'm not planning to go.
Okay.
Because
I
I'm
already-
not gonna go over there, and I would come back here for our regular meeting. And the morning session is just the history, in my understanding, and I've heard the history. I would like to see the afternoon speakers, so after our meeting, and there's only 50 tickets available, so after we're done with our meeting, if it's early enough, I might just go stand in a corner and listen to the afternoon speakers. If they throw me out, they throw me out.
Okay, I already have my ticket.
I asked Charlotte for a ticket, but she wasn't sure if there were any available. And I thought, if I'm sponsoring this, I'm going, right?
We should, yeah.
Well,
So-
we're gonna talk about that at open discussion.
talk about
so
that later.
maybe-
All
Can we
right.
put this whole thing off till open
We can wait.
discussion,
Yeah.
John?
Sure.
And then the last thing I had is we do have next week in the afternoon on Tuesday retreat follow-up, and that will be to just 2 things, primarily to finalize working agreements with the board, and then just review kind of the minutes and takeaways, action steps that we heard, and confirm those with the board. So that's what we'll be doing in the afternoon.
Okay.
And that's all I have on future agendas.
I don't think I have anything. Did you have something? How about you?
No.
Okay. So under that, I also want to talk about the APJA. So I've been in contact with Matthew, and so if it's okay with you guys, when they get their maintenance plan more finalized, they would like to come to us for an ask. And Kelly had said 200,000, but that's 200,000.
200,000?
That's for the whole thing, so the ask for the county would be 100,000. So at this point, they're not coming to us yet to ask for it until they have their act together, basically. So I just wanted to make sure it's okay with you guys if Matthew or Diane or both come and present the maintenance plan
yeah.
that Kelly had mentioned before, and then we can make a decision about it. Okay?
I thought they were gonna present it today, and I was not quite ready for that.
So that's something that's gonna have to be on future agendas as well, John, and let me just look for Matthew's letter. Give me 1 second here.
We are getting nickel and dime today. No.
They had a few more ideas from the action which we were working on. They don't have a projected date, so they'll just have to wait in line.
Well, we tried.
Yeah, so don't worry about it yet. We'll bring it up again when I hear back from Matthew. Okay, so that's that. And now we're in open discussion. So, so tomorrow, I just have a question. I just spoke with Ellen Anderson. She wants to do a public comment about the appointment of Michael Waters to the Airport Flight Top Safety Task Force. And I can just open it up for her to speak during that time, right,
Oh,
John?
yeah.
Even though it's a one reading, there's,
Yeah, you can open it up.
Rich is on also, you might want to comment.
Yeah, Francie, I did, whenever I submitted that, there was a suggestion, it's a one-read resolution, but I think when these come to the BOCC from the AAB and they're only one reads, I would suggest each time you open it up for public comment.
okay.
Just, so yeah, that's kind of like you did last time we had our greenhouse gas resolution. You just open it up for public comment. And
Okay,
took
well,
those.
all right, I wrote it on there, so I'll do that. So
Okay.
that was one question I had there. And then, so, this is the letter for, supporting the Snowmass Library that, affordable housing that I've been asked to sign that we agreed we would do, guys. So it basically says, the board submits this letter in support of the Town of Snowmass Village's request for congressionally directed spending for the upcoming fiscal year for the Snowmass Inn project. The Town of Snowmass Village and Pickens County have a long history of partnership and mutual support. If funded, the Snowmass Inn project will deliver high quality and affordable housing to the town's workforce, which will in turn increase the resiliency of the regional workforce. We're happy to offer our strong support, blah, blah, blah. Okay, will I sign that?
As long as it doesn't interfere with any other grant opportunities we were looking at, and I don't think it does.
Well, this one's due by the 10th or something, so we can't.
I
Go
might
ahead.
be able to speak to that actually. I agree. Staff does not believe there is a conflict. We are intending we're intending to submit the microgrid project also for a congressionally directed spending request of up to 2.5 million. That has been supported by the state, by the governor's office, but these would not be necessarily competing projects in terms of
Okay.
agencies where the funding would come. So it'd be staff's recommendation that we both submit the request for funding for the microgrid, as well as supporting Snowmass's request
Okay,
to the
great.
delegation.
Okay, and then the other thing I have is the Housing Coalition request for $10,000. So I want to support the Housing Summit, and I think we should go and we should support it to the best of our ability. I just am a little unhappy that neither Gail or Rebecca came to us earlier on in the planning of it, and I did meet with Rebecca and she asked about using the logo, but it was unclear what actually the format was then, and it wasn't a formal request. I just would have liked this to have taken slightly different steps in terms of Pickens County.
Yeah, like us being able to attend.
Well, like being guaranteed seats instead of having to go online and buy tickets,
Well, and that to
even though
not
we
be in
didn't
a
have to
day
pay
of our
for
regular
them.
meeting without checking our schedules out in January.
That too, yeah, so.
And who else is funding? Is the City of Aspen funding? Is APSHA funding?
Well, they are on there as sponsors,
Yeah,
so.
but we don't know how much, we don't
No,
know,
we
we don't know what the
don't.
total cost is, we don't know who else is
Yeah.
participating, what's the venue cost, we don't have any information. I agree with you, I wanna do some level of support. I'm not comfortable with $10,000. It's my understanding that they were
That's
gonna
what,
ask
that's
for.
what the request is, but
Yeah,
that's
not
to
comfortable
be
there.
as a, sponsor. And then there's a,
And it's a Picken
something-
Eagle County Summit. Is Eagle County being asked? We've been asking this of everybody who's been coming to us for funds lately. Who else is participating in funding? And we're not being provided with that information, so
let me see here.
I don't know what the board's
This
comfortable
is-
with funding.
I'm trying to find the actual,
Cause I
Okay,
really
here.
wanted to go for the afternoon session, which is, I think, of most
well, our
value.
meeting's only gonna be like an hour and a half. So if we start,
See, I don't even know what the, I mean, our meeting? Yeah.
Yes.
So
So-
I'm not gonna get a ticket, cause I want somebody who's gonna be there the whole day, but I may choose to go over there and
well,
just
the
stand
ticket,
in
you know
the
the
back of
tickets
the
are
room.
free, right?
Yeah, but there's only 50.
I don't think that's right. I think there were only 50 left.
I heard there were only 50 to begin with.
Well, Door Hosier is pretty small, right?
No, the building, the door hosier seats can
Oh,
seat
there's
a
that
lot.
downstairs space. Yeah.
This is the upstairs main thing. We see, we don't even know. We just, it was
So
moved
anyway,
from the
that's-
Jerome to the door hosier, the dates were changed.
I wanna get,
So I think
we should try to move along because Greg has to leave at 3:30 and we have.
4:30.
4:30, but we
Okay.
have a,
Exact. I'm comfortable with some level of funding. I don't know what the board's comfortable with.
Half.
just gonna have it.
$1,000 apiece?
I'm sorry, I was looking for the actual,
I could go with
Announcement.
5. It's coming out of your policy or whatever. What's that fund you have, John, tucked in the corner?
Well, I would
Initiative.
suggest on this, maybe we tap into the housing funds. I think, I'm not sure if you're talking about the I know you can't take it out of your discretionary funds.
No,
at
but
this
you
point.
have
We have a
another
housing fund, right?
strategic planning or initiative.
We have a strategic initiatives fund that would take about, a third of that out, I think, right now.
What about our housing
Depending on where
fund?
you end up, if it's at 10,000 or,
I don't know if we can use our housing fund for this.
what about the 5 million we put aside for housing?
yeah, that's what I was talking
Let's give 'em
about, the
5
general
million.
fund.
Let's take
No,
it
I
from
don't wanna
that
give
fund.
them 5 million.
You can't use, so let me be clear, you cannot use housing impact fees for this, absolutely not. So we can't use our housing fund for that.
Oh.
But we do have the 5 million that was budgeted, undesignated in the
Chipping away.
Right.
general fund that could be used with board approval. This probably fits within those 4 squares
Let's use that.
of that. Or, yeah, I can use the strategic initiatives fund, and if I need to come back to you all, if something comes up, I can do that.
I'd like to
So-
propose we just take it out of that housing fund that we can take it from,
5
which is the
million.
new one, the 5 million. That's the one we can pull it from. Let's take it from that. And I think it makes sense to take it from that.
And I will try and go over for the afternoon.
I'm planning to
I
be
will
there.
be here for the meeting at noon.
Yeah, it's frustrating because I think that maybe this came earlier. Kelly had it and maybe there was a miscommunication or something, because it seemed like there was something in early February to
Nothing
tell us
was,
about.
nothing was finalized, and then it
Right.
kept changing.
Well,
It's like a moving target. It's still
Yeah.
a moving target.
So I feel a need to protest a little bit, as the board seems to be frustrated. Where's Gail? Why hasn't Gail called us to tell us
I
what
talked to
she's
Gail
doing?
on the phone.
I thought she was
Okay,
supposed to
you've
be here
talked to her,
today.
but we haven't spoken to Gail. We don't really know. So I can understand Patty's frustration, and I
Yeah.
share that.
But I'm fine with 5,000, and I will try, when our meeting is done here, I'll run over there, because I really do want to hear the afternoon speakers.
Do you wanna limit it to 5,000,
Yes.
Greg?
Yes, I think so. In this case, yes. In
All right, well,
protest.
that's 2 of you, so, doesn't matter what I say.
Well, say what you want. No, convince me otherwise. I'm happy to.
No, I'm good with 5.
I,
What, do you want to do less?
gonna be really interesting to see what this thing is. So I guess I wanna stick with 5,000 too, because I don't really have a sense of what the point of this is, where
Right,
we're gonna
okay.
go with
I
it.
think you
that's fair.
said, you
I
hit
think
the
that's-
nail.
Okay, 5,000, John.
Out of the 5 million. We're not doing 5 million. I clarified that with
So
Francie.
let's get that to them sooner rather than later, because obviously if they're putting this together, they need the funds to do it,
And let,
so that they don't cancel it.
or change the venue, or change the date. They could change the
Done
date
that
when we
already.
could all be
It
there,
is,
and I might
ex-
have the
the
ante.
venue is expensive, but it's like half of what the Jerome wanted, so.
John, if there's anything that you want to add to this, or you need to
don't know,
communicate
don't
with us about this, something we don't
It's like
know or we
20,000
should
for the
know
whole
going
thing.
into this, please do. But if
Can't remember.
if you're,
Rebecca didn't.
if you're, I just wanted to tell you that. I want to, you know, if you have
No,
something, anything that you
Greg, I
want to add.
appreciate that. I think
bothers me in
staff
itself.
doesn't have much more, any more clarity than the board does on this request.
Okay,
Great, then, all right, it's done.
so are you done?
Okay, so I
Would you
think
like a
we
motion?
are going to go into a special meeting, and the proposed items are the airport outside professional services, discussion with council pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, 4B. So I'll look for a motion to
So
go
moved.
into exec session.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
I assume we're going up to the
We're
moon
going
bells.
upstairs.
Okay, so we're done with grassroots?
We are closing
Nope,
this
we're done.
meeting.
The work
Thank you,
session.
Andorra.
Thanks, grassroots. Thank you, everybody.